Somewhere in America, on a street that doesn't quite exist in any state you can point to on a map, there is a yellow house at 742 Evergreen Terrace. The lawn is a little patchy. There is almost always something wrong with the car in the driveway. A dog sleeps on the porch with the loose, heavy kind of sleep that only dogs and very old men seem to manage. The lights inside are on. They are always on. They have been on since the 17th of December, 1989. And in all that time, through every season, through every storm, through every impossible thing that has happened in this impossible town, those lights have never gone out. You are settling in now, getting comfortable, letting the weight of wherever you were today begin to lift off your shoulders, your chest, your eyes, and I am going to walk you through Springfield tonight. Every strange corner of it, every familiar face, every moment that made you laugh when you were a kid and makes you feel something quieter now that you are older. We are going to drift through all of it together, slowly, the way you drift through a town you used to know well, recognizing the streets but not quite remembering why they feel so personal. Springfield is the most famous fictional town in American history. More people could draw a rough map of it from memory than could draw the town they actually grew up in. That yellow house, the nuclear cooling towers just visible over the rooftops, the quick E-Mart on the corner with its buzzing fluorescent lights and its inadequate hot dog rotation, the elementary school with its chipped paint and its flagpole that always seems to be at half-mast for some unclear reason. Moe's Tavern, which smells exactly like you would imagine, and yet somehow the regulars keep coming back every single evening, claiming their stools as if the stools belong to them, which, in a way, they do. The thing about Springfield is that it was always designed to feel like somewhere you already knew. Matt Groening, the man who dreamed it up, named it after one of the most common city names in America. There are Springfields in Oregon, in Illinois, in Massachusetts, in Missouri, in Ohio, in dozens of other states. He chose it because he wanted the town to belong to everyone. He wanted anyone watching from anywhere to look at the screen and feel the faint pull of recognition. That looks like my town. That feels like the kind of place I grew up near. Those are the kinds of people I have known. And it worked. It worked so thoroughly that Springfield stopped being a fictional location and became something closer to a shared memory. A place that exists in the cultural imagination in a way that actual geography cannot quite match. You cannot visit Springfield. You cannot look it up on a map with any confidence. But you have been there. Everyone who has watched this show has been there. You have sat in that living room on that orange couch and watched that television with that family, and it felt like home in a way that is difficult to explain and even more difficult to let go of. So tonight we are going back. We are going to walk through every strange, funny, sad, surreal, and genuinely bizarre moment that this show has accumulated across 36 years and nearly 800 episodes. We are going to move slowly through it, the way the best dreams move. Not frantically, not urgently. There is nothing urgent here. Springfield will still be there whether we rush or dawdle. It always is. Let your breathing slow down a little. Feel the weight of your body against whatever you are lying on. The show has been on longer than most of its current viewers have been alive, and tonight we are going to let it wash over you like something very old and very familiar. The first thing you need to understand about Springfield is that it operates on its own logic. Not the logic of the real world, where things have consequences and time moves forward and fish have the expected number of eyes. Springfield has its own rules, and those rules are consistent in their inconsistency. Things happen and then unhappen. Catastrophes arrive and dissolve. Characters do things that should permanently alter their lives and then show up the following week exactly as they were before, as if someone pressed a very gentle reset button between episodes. This is not a flaw. It is, in its own strange way, one of the most comforting things about the show. No matter what happens in Springfield, no matter how far things go off the rails, no matter how many times the town is destroyed or flooded or invaded or sealed under a dome by the federal government, you know that next week the family will be sitting on that couch. Homer will be home from the power plant. Marge will have made something for dinner that Homer will probably complain about before eating 3 helpings of. Bart will be planning something inadvisable. Lisa will be reading something that is too advanced for her age. Maggie will be watching all of it from her perspective on the floor, taking everything in with those enormous, patient eyes. The loop holds. It has always held. And there is tremendous comfort in that. Springfield first appeared on our screens in the late 80s as a spin-off from a sketch show called The Tracy Ullman Show. The early versions of the Simpson family were rough, angular, almost unsettling in the way that early animation sometimes is. Homer had a jaw that jutted forward in a way that suggested something prehistoric. Marge's hair was more erratic. The children looked like they had been drawn by someone working from a description of children, rather than from direct observation of any actual children. But there was already something there. Something in the writing, in the voices, in the basic architecture of this family that felt true. Homer Simpson, even in those early rough-edge sketches, was already recognizable as a specific kind of father. Imperfect in ways that were funny, but also in ways that were sometimes quietly sad. He tried. He failed. He tried again with the same approximate level of effort that had failed the last time, somehow still surprised when it failed again. He loved his family in a way that was genuine, but that his particular set of limitations made very difficult to express in ways that were useful to them. Marge was already the center of gravity, patient, capable, quietly suffering in ways the show would spend decades unpacking. She held the household together through a combination of willpower and suppressed anxiety, and the show always knew she was the most interesting character even when it was not quite sure how to use her. The kids were already themselves. Bart, 10 years old and already fully formed as a particular kind of chaos engine, not malicious, never quite malicious, but constitutionally unable to leave anything alone, to let any situation exist without poking it to see what would fall out. Lisa, 8 years old and already playing the saxophone like her life depended on it, because, in a way, it did. The music was the thing that was hers, the thing that no one could take away, the thing she could pour herself into when the world around her was too frustrating to engage with directly. And Maggie, 1 year old. 1 year old for 36 years, looking at everything. The show moved from those sketches to a half-hour primetime slot in December 1989, and within a few seasons it had become something unprecedented. It was the most watched show on television. It was influencing language, fashion, cultural conversation. Kids were quoting it on playgrounds. Adults were quoting it at dinner tables. Phrases from it were seeping into everyday speech in ways that the people using them often didn't even notice anymore. Words like dough, which had never really existed in the English language before Homer Simpson, became so common that the Oxford English Dictionary eventually added them. Springfield became real in the way that fictional places sometimes do when enough people spend enough time in them. It became a shared space that everyone who watched the show could navigate from memory. And here tonight we are returning to that space. We are going to visit every strange corner of it. We are going to remember the episodes that made you laugh so hard you couldn't breathe, and the ones that made you sit quietly for a moment before you could move on to the next thing. We are going to drift through the weird ones, the dark ones, the ones that were clearly someone on the writing staff working something out. We are going to walk past all of it slowly and let it settle around you like something soft. Let your eyes get heavy. Let your thoughts slow. Springfield is patient. It has been waiting here since 1989. It will wait a little longer while you get comfortable. The town itself is worth describing, because the geography of Springfield is part of what makes it so strange. It is a place that should not exist. It has a coastline and a mountain range and a desert and a forest and a harbor and a gorge, all within reasonable driving distance of each other. It has climate that seems to shift based on the needs of the current episode rather than any meteorological logic. It snows in Springfield sometimes. Other times, the same town is baking under summer heat so intense that the asphalt shimmers. The skyline is anchored by two things: the nuclear cooling towers, which stand at the edge of town like enormous concrete exclamation points, releasing steam into the air at all hours of the day and night, and somewhere behind the residential streets, the elementary school bell tower, which you can hear from the Simpson living room on quiet mornings. The town square has a statue of the town founder, Jebediah Springfield, holding a musket and looking determined in the way that all town founders in these kinds of towns look determined in their statues. There is a legend around him, and the legend is complicated by the fact that scholars within the show have occasionally suggested that the real Jebediah Springfield was a morally dubious figure who may have framed a different man, and whose famous quote about building a new life in the wilderness was lifted almost word for word from someone else. But the town loves its founder. The statue remains in the square. The annual celebrations happen every year. Springfield chooses the version of history it prefers, which is a recurring feature of how the town operates. The Quickie Mart stands at a corner that has never been precisely mapped, but that feels like it is always nearby. Apu Nahasapi Mapedalon runs it with a combination of genuine hospitality and very flexible standards around expiration dates. The hot dogs on the roller grill have been rotating since before anyone can remember. The squishy machine in the corner produces a semi-frozen beverage in colors that do not occur in nature. The fluorescent lights buzz with a frequency that is slightly different from the frequency of all other fluorescent lights, as if the quick E-Mart exists in a marginally different electromagnetic reality. Moe's Tavern is darker than the quick E-Mart. It is always darker than everywhere else, even when it is the middle of the afternoon and sunshine is pouring down the street outside. Inside, the light is amber and low, and the bar smells of something you would rather not identify precisely. Mo Sislak stands behind it with the expression of a man who has seen everything and found none of it particularly encouraging. He serves beer to the same regulars every night. Homer, Barney, Lenny, Carl. They sit and they talk and they drink, and the hours pass the way hours pass when you are not quite sure where else you would be. And then there is the Simpson house. 742 Evergreen Terrace. The house that has been on television longer than almost any other building in American fiction. You know the layout. The living room with the orange couch and the television and the lamp that provides more warmth than illumination. The kitchen with the round table where the family eats and argues and occasionally has the kind of moment that becomes the emotional core of an entire episode. The stairs that lead up to the bedrooms, each one of which contains a version of the world filtered through the particular sensibility of the person who sleeps there. Homer and Marge's bedroom has a bed that is always slightly too small for the two of them, and a window that looks out onto the backyard where the barbecue sometimes lives. It is a room that has witnessed more of the show's quiet moments than perhaps any other location in Springfield. Whispered conversations. Marge staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. Homer asleep within 12 seconds of his head touching the pillow, deeply, entirely unconscious, undisturbed by anything short of someone removing his pillow from beneath his head. Bart's room is chaotic in a way that suggests a specific kind of intelligence at work. Not messy exactly, but organized according to a system that makes perfect sense to Bart and is legible to no one else. There are comics and slingshot supplies, and the occasional item that really ought not to be in a child's bedroom but somehow ended up there anyway. His window is the one with the view of the neighbor's house, which is Ned Flanders's house, which is aggressively well-maintained in a way that seems to comment silently on the Simpson home across the fence. Lisa's room is where the saxophone lives. It stands in the corner on its stand, and it is the first thing you see when you walk in and the last thing visible in the room when the door closes. Lisa has books everywhere, in shelves and in stacks and in arrangements that suggest they are organized by something other than alphabetical order. Maybe by how recently she read them. Maybe by how much they meant to her. Maybe by a system known only to an 8-year-old girl who has read more books than most adults and has thought about all of them more carefully than the authors probably intended. And Maggie's room is the quietest. The crib in the center, the mobile hanging above it, the pacifier that is always nearby, and Maggie in the middle of it all, watching, always watching, with those wide eyes that take everything in and give very little back. This is the house. This is the family. This is the town. And we are going to spend the night here. The show began with something simple, a family at Christmas. Homer had spent the Christmas bonus before he received it, which meant that when the bonus did not materialize, he had nothing to give his family. The episode is quiet by the show's later standards. There are no elaborate celebrity cameos. There are no absurdist set pieces. It is just a man trying to fix a mistake he made, trying to give his family a Christmas that he nearly failed to provide, and ending up at a dog track where he bets on a greyhound named Santa's Little Helper because the name feels like a sign. The dog loses. The dog's owner abandons him at the track because a losing dog is not worth the cost of feeding. And Homer brings him home. He stands in the living room holding this dejected, bony greyhound, and he says that while he cannot give his family the Christmas he wanted to give them, maybe this is good enough. Maybe this scraggly, failed racing dog is the thing that makes this Christmas real. The family stands around him and they smile. Santa's Little Helper licks someone's hand, and the episode ends. It was the first episode of the show. It was broadcast in December 1989. And even then, even in that very first story, you could feel what the show was reaching for. Something about the specific texture of trying. About the gap between the life you want to provide and the life you manage to provide. And about the love that fills that gap imperfectly but genuinely. Homer did not give his family a great Christmas. He gave them a dog, and the dog was enough. because the love behind it was enough, and they all knew it even if none of them said it quite that way. That is the engine of the show. It has been running on that engine for 36 years. All the absurdity, all the celebrity cameos, all the surreal plots and cartoon violence and impossible scenarios, all of it runs on that same engine. A family that loves each other imperfectly, in the middle of a town that should not exist, in a world that does not make sense, trying to hold on to something that they cannot quite name but that they know, when they feel it, is the most important thing they have. The bizarre moments are what we are here to celebrate tonight. But the reason they matter, the reason they sit so warmly in the memory, is that they are always surrounded by that emotional foundation. The strangeness of Springfield is made bearable by the constancy of The Simpsons. And the constancy of The Simpsons is made interesting by the strangeness of Springfield. You are getting sleepy now. That is good. That is the idea. Let the town settle around you. Let the familiar theme music play somewhere in the back of your mind. That cheerful, slightly manic melody that has played at the beginning of every episode for 36 years. The school bus. The clouds parting. The family rushing home from all their separate corners of Springfield to land on the couch in the same moment they have been landing on it since 1989. They are home. You are home. Springfield is exactly as you left it. And we are just getting started. If you are watching this late at night, if it is dark where you are and quiet and you are just settling in, drop a comment down below and tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing where in the world Springfield's light is reaching tonight. And if you want to keep drifting through these stories, make sure you are subscribed so the next one is waiting for you when you come back. The Springfield nuclear power plant sits at the edge of town like a fact that everyone has agreed to stop thinking about. Two enormous cooling towers, a facility of indeterminate size spreading behind them. The occasional wisp of steam or unidentified vapor drifting into the sky above the rooftops. If you drive into Springfield from the north, which you can do on some episodes and cannot do on others depending on the geographic logic of the week, the plant is one of the first things you see. It announces the town before the town announces itself. Homer Simpson has worked there for the entirety of his adult life. He holds the title of Safety Inspector in Sector 7G. He is, by every available measure, the least qualified person who could hold this position. He is, by the logic of Springfield, the only person who could hold it. The plant was built and is still owned by Charles Montgomery Burns, who has been alive for approximately 120 years depending on which episode you are calculating from. It employs a significant portion of Springfield's working population. It powers the entire town. And it operates in a state of such spectacular regulatory non-compliance that a surprise inspection once found 342 separate safety violations. 342. The estimated cost to bring the facility up to code was $56 million. Mr. Burns declined to spend it, not because he could not afford it, which he could, several times over, but because spending it would require acknowledging that the violations existed, and acknowledging the violations would invite the next obvious question, which is what those violations had already done to the people living downwind of them for the past several decades. Burns is a practical man. Homer's daily routine at the plant is one of the great surrealist comedies that the show has been running quietly in the background of every other plot for 36 years. He arrives. He takes his seat at his workstation in the control room. He opens a donut. He falls asleep with a precision and immediacy that suggests his body has been trained to associate the chair with unconsciousness. Warning lights blink on and off above him, readings spike and fall. Occasionally, an alarm sounds, and Homer wakes up long enough to push a button more or less at random before returning to sleep. The plant has not exploded. This is either a miracle or a testament to the facility's underlying structural resilience, which would be remarkable given the chewing gum holding the cooling towers together. There is an episode in which Homer discovers that a donut has fallen into the reactor core. His response is to wonder, with genuine scientific curiosity, whether the radiation might make it grow bigger. This is not a metaphor. He throws more donuts in to test the hypothesis. The plant does not explode. The donuts do not grow. Homer is mildly disappointed and moves on. The early seasons of the show spent a lot of time in the plant, in that control room, in the specific texture of Homer's working life, the fluorescent lighting, the hum of machinery, the sensation of being in a place where the things that you are supposed to be monitoring are completely beyond your comprehension and somewhat beyond your ability to stay awake through. Homer's workstation is a shrine to how thoroughly a person can be present in a place without being in any meaningful sense engaged with it. Lenny and Carl are there too, which is its own kind of comfort. Lenny Leonard and Carl Carlson are Homer's best friends at the plant, which means they are also his best friends in the world, since Homer does not really separate his work life from his social life with any great diligence. They eat lunch together. They have deeply stupid conversations about things that do not matter. They provide each other with the kind of uncomplicated companionship that does not require anyone to grow or change or examine themselves. It is simply presence, showing up at the same time every day and being available to talk about donuts or the relative merits of various beers or whatever peculiar thing has happened to Homer recently. Lenny has a face that has been injured so many times and in such a variety of ways that the show eventually began treating his eye injuries as a running motif. Something always hits Lenny in the eye. Debris, unexpected projectiles, the corner of an open cupboard door, a wayward firework, a stray piece of sports equipment. He reacts to these injuries with a cheerfulness that is either admirable or deeply worrying, depending on how you look at it. Carl is more measured. Carl is arguably the most competent person in Homer's immediate social circle, which is a bit like being the tallest person in a room where everyone is sitting down. He has a master's degree, which the show reveals, and then mostly ignores because a master's degree is not especially useful at a nuclear plant, where the primary skill required is the ability to push buttons without sleeping through the warnings they trigger. The plant has had several memorable incidents over the course of the show's run, beyond the general ambient low-level disaster of Homer's daily presence there. There was the episode in which a team of German investors purchased the plant from Burns, who had temporarily lost control of his empire through a complicated series of financial missteps. The German investors were efficient, cheerful, and genuinely committed to running a well-organized nuclear facility. Their first act was to fire Homer. Their second act was to request a full safety assessment, which nearly bankrupted them when the cost of achieving basic compliance was revealed. Burns eventually bought the plant back. He immediately rehired Homer. A competent safety inspector would shut the plant down. Homer keeps it running by never quite understanding it well enough to realize it should be shut down. There was the episode in which a meltdown warning was triggered while Homer was on his lunch break. The warning system produced a specific sound, a particular alarm, that Homer had been trained to respond to. His training had been conducted during a period when he was also deeply distracted by something else, which meant the training took hold in an unexpected way. The alarm sound had been associated in Homer's memory with a specific song he found catchy, and whenever the meltdown alarm sounded, Homer's conditioned response was to dance. He danced through the meltdown warning with an enthusiasm that was not what the training had been designed to produce. There was the episode in which plutonium was being used as a paperweight on someone's desk. The camera held on this detail for slightly longer than it needed to, the show's way of acknowledging that it was aware of what it was showing you. Plutonium. On a desk. As a paperweight. The show moved on. Springfield moved on. There were the human skeletons in the basement. This detail is introduced in the context of a general tour of the plant's many safety violations, and then never addressed again. Human skeletons. In the basement of an operating nuclear reactor. No explanation is offered for how they got there or whose they are, or why nobody has contacted the appropriate authorities about them. The show lists them among the violations and continues. The inspector notes them down. Burns is informed. The tour continues. And Springfield, collectively, does not follow up on the human skeletons. This is a very Springfield thing to happen. The show has a gift for introducing details that should be absolutely disqualifying and then treating them with the same weight as a broken vending machine in the break room. Burns once imprisoned children in a work camp. Burns once blocked out the sun. Burns once kept a sloth bear named Bobo in his home as a companion. The details accumulate around him like sediment, each one individually astonishing, collectively forming a portrait of a man who exists so far outside the normal rules of accountability that the rules have essentially stopped trying to apply to him. The plant's cooling towers are perhaps the most iconic industrial structures in American animation. They appear in the opening credits every episode, visible as the school bus makes its way through town, as Marge drives past them in the station wagon, as the camera sweeps across the Springfield skyline. They are always there, steam rising. The concrete slightly cracked in ways that the chewing gum repairs have not fully addressed. Mr. Burns watches the plant from his office high in the main building. The office is enormous, dark, paneled in wood that probably has a history. His desk is positioned so that he can observe the control room below through a glass partition, a detail that raises the question of how closely he has ever actually observed Homer's behavior down there, and what conclusions he has drawn from that observation. His assistant, Wayland Smithers, stands nearby. Smithers is devoted to Burns with a totality that the show explores from many angles over the years. He anticipates Burns's needs. He manages Burns's schedule. He organizes the weekly medical treatments that keep Burns alive. He provides logistical competence in the service of a man whose instincts are entirely self-serving and whose moral compass stopped pointing north sometime around the Coolidge administration. Burns emerges from his office occasionally to interact with the workers, which never goes well. He does not know their names. He is not interested in their names. He refers to Homer as something different in nearly every episode. Some variation on Fat Man or the fellow who works in the nuclear thingy, or a series of increasingly elaborate mispronunciations of Simpson that suggest he has never quite committed the word to memory. Homer, for his part, has spent decades hoping that Burns will one day acknowledge him by name. The yearning is genuine. It is one of the show's most consistent emotional threads. Homer wants to be seen. He wants to matter. He wants the man who signs his paychecks to know that he exists as a specific individual person with a name that deserves to be remembered. Burns never remembers. There is an episode in which Homer becomes convinced that Burns likes him, that some small kindness Burns has shown means that Homer has finally broken through. The episode builds this conviction carefully, lets Homer believe it fully, and then reveals that Burns genuinely had no idea who Homer was during any of the interactions Homer had interpreted as meaningful connection. The revelation is played for comedy. It lands somewhere between funny and devastating, the way the best Simpsons moments do. The plant grounds have been the setting for a remarkable variety of additional incidents beyond the standard operating chaos. There was the giant donut Homer requested be constructed on company property because Homer had a dream and Burns could not quite find a reason to refuse when it was framed a certain way. The donut existed for approximately one episode. Homer ate a significant portion of it before circumstances intervened. There was the picnic that Burns organized for his employees, which was less a gesture of goodwill and more a calculated attempt to demonstrate to state officials that he was the kind of benevolent employer who organized picnics. The picnic had activities. The activities were designed to make Burns look generous. They succeeded in making him look like someone who had read a description of a generous person and was doing their best impression. There was the time Homer tried to organize a union at the plant, which led to Burns deploying an increasingly dramatic series of intimidation tactics before eventually capitulating to a contract that gave the workers dental and was broadly considered a win, even though the dental was extremely limited in scope. The plant has also been the unlikely setting for some of the show's more tender moments. Homer has had several quiet epiphanies while sitting at his workstation in the dark, the warning lights cycling around him, the hum of machinery providing a kind of ambient soundtrack. In one season, following a period of significant personal upheaval, Homer sits alone at his post late at night and talks to a picture of his family that he keeps in his pocket. He talks to Marge. He tells her about his day. He tells her he loves her. He tells her he knows he is not what she deserved and that he has never quite figured out how to be it and that he hopes she knows anyway. It is late night at a nuclear power plant in a cartoon, and it is one of the most sincere things the show has ever done. The plant will keep running tonight. The cooling towers will keep steaming. Homer's chair will keep his impression. The donut will be waiting in the drawer for tomorrow. And somewhere in the reactor core, maybe, a slightly larger donut is slowly rotating in the warmth. Sleep is close now. Let it come. The plant is humming. The town is quiet. The warning lights in Sector 7G are cycling through their colors, yellow and red and yellow again, in a slow, hypnotic rhythm that no one is watching. No one except Homer's photograph. Marge smiling back from his pocket. Patient as always. Homer J. Simpson has held more jobs than most people have thought about wanting. He has been a safety inspector, which is the one that stuck, but he has also been a monorail conductor, a food critic, a mascot for a baseball team, a bodyguard, a sugar baron, a professional boxing manager, a carny, a snowplow operator, a country music manager, a truck driver, a beer baron, a food critic again after the first attempt did not go as planned, a mission specialist for NASA, an astronaut, a member of a barbershop quartet, a grease collector, a vigilante crime fighter, a cult leader, a secret society member, a professional golfer, a fisherman, a personal fitness trainer, a rock musician, a New York City resident for approximately 1 week, an inventor, a movie producer, a member of a revolutionary group, a professional daredevil, a teacher, a waffle salesman, a prison inmate on at least 2 separate occasions, and at one point the owner of a bowling alley that he won, then lost in a single episode. He has done all of this while remaining employed as a nuclear safety inspector, a fact that says something about how loosely the show has always treated the concept of a linear timeline. The jobs come and go. The plant remains, Homer goes out, lives another life entirely, and returns. The space episode is perhaps the single most famous thing Homer has ever done outside of the plant. He was selected as a civilian astronaut by NASA, partly because they were losing public interest and needed a more relatable figure to generate enthusiasm for the space program, and partly because Homer fulfilled every criterion that they had not previously thought to set as a minimum requirement, and were therefore technically not able to exclude him on. Homer in space is Homer in the most complete possible version of his natural state. The training montage shows him ingesting information with the same efficiency he brings to every intellectual task, which is close to zero. His fellow trainees are professional astronauts with decades of experience and multiple advanced degrees. Homer eats chips during the briefings. He falls asleep during the zero-gravity simulations. He adapts to weightlessness with an immediacy that might suggest some innate physical aptitude if it were not clearly just that he has always moved through the world, as if gravity's claim on him is more of a suggestion than a rule. The mission itself goes wrong in the way Homer-adjacent missions always go wrong. A snack bag of potato chips that Homer smuggled aboard creates a crisis when the chips escape into the zero-gravity environment of the shuttle and begin drifting into the instrument panels. The mission controllers watching from the ground observe this with the specific expression of people who knew this was going to happen but had genuinely hoped it would not. Homer resolves the situation through a combination of improvisation and pure physical reflex that saves the mission through no process that can be described as intentional. Buzz Aldrin is on the flight. He is the one who has to explain to Mission Control that the situation is under control while Homer does something unprecedented in the background. Buzz Aldrin, who walked on the moon, spent part of a Simpsons episode trying to calmly communicate that a floating chip situation was being addressed. If he had opinions about this, he kept them to his character's voice and expressed them mainly through very careful enunciation. Homer returns from space as a hero. Springfield greets him with the enthusiasm they bring to all their heroes, which is total and immediate and lasts approximately until the next interesting thing happens, at which point his space voyage becomes historical footnote. This is the standard arc of fame in Springfield. The food critic episode occupies a different register. Homer discovers that he has a gift for descriptive writing when he begins leaving anonymous reviews of Springfield restaurants online under the pseudonym The Unknown Gourmand. The reviews are extraordinary. They are sensory and vivid and emotionally resonant in ways that suggest a deep, previously untapped literary sensibility. Homer experiences food with his entire being. He does not taste things so much as he surrenders to them completely, and his descriptions of that surrender are genuinely beautiful. His cover is eventually blown. He becomes famous. Restaurants begin attempting to bribe him with enormous meals and sycophantic attention. Homer, who has never been resistant to either meals or sycophantic attention, is briefly corrupted in ways the show finds extremely funny. He begins accepting gifts. His standards warp. A restaurant that serves him an 8-course meal of things he loves receives an impossibly glowing review regardless of quality. A restaurant that serves him something genuinely excellent but ignores him receives something slightly less glowing because they did not make him feel special. The episode understands something true about criticism, which is that the critic's subjectivity is always part of the equation whether acknowledged or not, and that Homer's version of that subjectivity is just more nakedly honest than most. The Vigilante episode runs somewhat differently. Springfield had been experiencing a crime wave, or at least what the show characterized as a crime wave, though Springfield's baseline level of chaos makes determining what constitutes an escalation difficult. Homer, galvanized by a specific grievance against one criminal who had wronged him, decides to take matters into his own hands and becomes a masked vigilante called the Crimson Mender. His methods are not conventional. He does not fight crime so much as he engages in long emotional conversations with criminals about the choices they have made, while dressed in a costume that is aggressively homemade and makes him look like someone who watched a superhero film at double speed and then worked from memory. He is surprisingly effective, partly because the criminals of Springfield are not used to being emotionally engaged in their professional capacity and find it disarming, and partly because Homer is impossible to discourage in ways that wear people down eventually. Chief Wiggum is not pleased. The police have a complex relationship with crime in Springfield that the presence of an effective amateur really does disrupt. Wiggum is not a bad man. He is a man whose professional relationship with his own job is sufficiently casual that the phrase law enforcement does not quite capture what he does. He responds to situations eventually. He fills out paperwork about things that have already resolved themselves. He occasionally solves crimes, usually by accident, in ways that require him to take a moment to understand that he has done so. His son Ralph exists in a state of pure present tense that is almost philosophical. Ralph says things that have a dreamlike quality. He is not unintelligent in any way the show can quite define. He is simply operating on a frequency that does not always intersect with the frequency everyone else is using. He has been happy in every episode he has ever appeared in. This alone makes him one of the strangest characters in Springfield. The Barbershop Quartet episode. Homer discovers that he has a beautiful singing voice when four-part harmony is required. He and 3 other Springfield residents form a group called the B-Sharps and achieve a level of fame so remarkable that they become international sensations in the late 80s. They perform on The Tonight Show. They receive a Grammy. They are received in Japan as cultural ambassadors. Their faces appear on merchandise. Then it ends, the way things end. The group drifts apart. The musical moment passes. Homer returns to the plant with a Grammy in his pocket and no clear way to explain where he has been. The episode flashes back to this period from the present day, which is one of the show's favorite structural devices. You see the current Homer and the young Homer simultaneously, the gap between them a kind of gentle comedy in itself. Young Homer full of potential he is about to fully fail to capitalize on. Current Homer watching it all from the other side of several decades and still not quite sure what happened. Homer as a sugar baron is one of the show's more deeply strange episodes. Sugar becomes scarce in Springfield after a series of supply chain events that the show explains with cheerful illogic, and Homer, who had stockpiled an enormous amount of sugar after discovering a truck overturned on the highway, finds himself in possession of a commodity that the town suddenly desperately wants. He becomes rich briefly. He sets up a stand in the yard. He negotiates with desperate buyers. He protects his supply with a ferocity that you would normally associate with things more intrinsically valuable than refined white sugar. He hires protection. He gets into a territory dispute with Fat Tony, Springfield's resident organized crime figure, which results in exactly the kind of standoff that you would expect when a nuclear plant safety inspector and a mobster find themselves competing over the sugar market. The sugar does not last. It never does. A rainstorm dissolves his supply. Homer watches it drain away with the expression of a man who has understood something important but cannot quite articulate what it is. There is an episode in which Homer becomes briefly immortal in the sense that no injury can kill him. This is not framed as a supernatural event. It is simply established that Homer's body has developed resilience beyond what is medically explicable, and the episode explores what happens when a man who is constitutionally unable to exercise caution is temporarily freed from all consequence. He jumps off things. He falls into things. He is hit by things. Each time his body absorbs the impact with an equanimity that gradually shifts from remarkable to alarming to something that is almost philosophically interesting. The show asking the question of whether physical immortality would make someone more careful or less, and answering it very clearly in Homer's case. The Springfield Gorge features in one of the show's most beloved set pieces. Homer, attempting to skateboard over the gorge on a dare, fails to reach the other side and falls. He then hits the bottom. He is then airlifted by helicopter, during which he falls again. He then hits the ambulance. He then rolls into the emergency room. Each successive injury is more improbable than the last. The scene runs significantly longer than any joke about a man falling should run, and the length becomes part of the comedy, the show testing how long it can continue the sequence before the audience stops laughing and starts experiencing something else. Homer survived. Homer always survives. This is one of the show's firmest commitments. His relationship with beer is a separate category of episode entirely. Homer drinks at Moe's with the dedication of someone who considers it vocational. He is not an alcoholic in the way the show ever directly engages with. He drinks because he loves it, because it makes the parts of his life that are frustrating temporarily less legible, because Moe's is warm and nobody asks him to be smarter than he is. The show is gentle with this mostly. It finds the comedy in the routine without pressing too hard on what the routine is covering. There is one episode in which Homer tries to quit drinking. He succeeds, for a time. He goes to a party sober and discovers that without the social lubricant of alcohol, he is capable of a kind of clear-eyed perception of other people's behavior that he normally does not access. He sees things. He notices things. He is uncomfortable with this new clarity in ways the episode plays as comedy, but that carry an undertow of something else. Homer without the fog is a different person, not necessarily a better person, just a different one. He eventually starts drinking again. Springfield has that effect on people. Homer's relationship with food deserves its own extended meditation, which the show has basically been conducting for 36 years. He eats the way some people pray, with total surrender and zero self-consciousness. He eats things that should not be eaten. He eats in quantities that defy basic biological understanding. He has eaten food that was clearly not food. He has eaten something that was definitely still moving. He has described the taste of something extraordinarily disgusting with an enthusiasm that made several other characters step back. The show's most sustained food joke is the pink donut, which appears everywhere. In dreams, in visions, in the title card, in the couch gag, on merchandise. Homer's relationship with the donut is the show's purest statement about desire. The donut is the thing he wants completely and simply. It is not complicated. It is not ambivalent. He wants it absolutely, and when he has it, he is briefly, totally happy in a way that nothing more sophisticated in his life produces as cleanly. There is an episode in which Homer travels to a chili cook-off and eats a pepper so spicy that it induces a spiritual vision. The vision involves a coyote voiced by Johnny Cash, who guides Homer through a desert landscape and tells him that his soulmate is nearby and that he should stop running from himself. It is one of the most beautiful sequences the show has ever produced, and it comes from a man eating a pepper at a chili festival. Homer's spiritual life is actually considerably richer than the show's comedy surface suggests. He has spoken with God twice. He has received prophecy. He has had visions. He has, on at least one occasion, seemed to understand something profound about the nature of the universe, though the understanding passed quickly and left no lasting trace. He talked to God while floating in space in his own imagination. He talked to God lying on the couch when he missed church. God spoke to him both times in the tone of someone who is slightly exasperated but fundamentally fond. God told Homer that the meaning of life would be revealed to him, but not yet. Homer took this in, nodded, and went back to watching television, which is honestly a very reasonable response to receiving a divine promise. The meaning of life will come eventually. In the meantime, there is television. Let your own thoughts drift now, the way Homer's do. The easy, undirected kind of thinking that happens when you are neither fully awake nor fully asleep. The warm middle space where Springfield lives. Homer's voice in the background somewhere, saying "dough" in that specific way that carries everything and nothing. The sound of a door, and then the refrigerator, and then the sound of contentment. You know this family. You have always known them. Bart Simpson was born mischievous. The show has depicted his birth in flashback more than once, and in each version there is something that suggests the trouble came early. He was born at Springfield General on April 1st, which is the kind of detail the show places carefully. He arrived into the world already in possession of the quality that would define him: the absolute inability to leave things alone, to observe a situation without poking it, to resist the pull of a prank or a scheme or a dare simply because the responsible choice existed as an alternative. He is 10 years old. He has been 10 years old for 36 years. In all that time, he has been in detention more often than most students attend class. He has skateboarded through every traversable surface in Springfield. He has called Moe's Tavern from a payphone that no longer functions in the real world and requested to speak with people named Alcoholic and Mike Roch and Ivana Tinkle, and Moe has fallen for it every time because Moe is one of the most consistently deceivable people in Springfield, which is a competitive category. The prank calls are a ritual. They have a quality that is almost ceremonial. Bart dials the number. The phone rings at Moe's. Moe answers with the enthusiasm of a man who has stopped expecting the call to be anything good. Bart delivers the name. Moe shouts it across the bar. There is a pause during which you can hear the bar go quiet. And then Mo realizes, which produces a reaction that has never in 36 years been measured or appropriate, and always contains the specific energy of a man who knows he is being made a fool of, and cannot stop it from working again. There is something almost tender about Mo's continued susceptibility. He should have learned by now. By any reasonable calculation, he should have developed an immunity. But he has not, and there is a reading of this where Mo is not being fooled but is choosing, at some unconscious level, to keep having this interaction because it is one of the few reliable sources of contact in his day. The bar is quiet most of the time. The phone rings. Someone wants to speak with Amanda Hugginkiss, and for a moment there is noise and the echo of someone else's laughter, and Mo is part of something even if that something is at his expense. Bart's relationship with authority figures at Springfield Elementary is the show's longest-running institutional drama. Principal Skinner and Bart are locked in a dynamic that neither of them can fully escape. Skinner is not a bad principal. He is a conscientious one, in ways that are sometimes undermined by the fact that his mother calls him Spanky. He believes in the mission of education. He has genuine investment in the students of Springfield Elementary, even when those students are actively dismantling the infrastructure of the school around him. Bart is not a bad student in the sense of being stupid or incurious. He has occasional flashes of insight that suggest the intelligence is there, waiting, just not especially interested in the particular forms the school has chosen to present it with. He can draw. He can be genuinely funny. He understands social dynamics with a sophistication that the school's curriculum has never found a way to engage with productively. He is bored, mainly, and boredom in Bart produces outcomes that keep Skinner's blood pressure elevated in ways that eventually become their own running gag. The detention episodes form their own genre. Bart sits at his desk, writing the same phrase 100 times on the blackboard. The phrase changes. It is one of the show's most consistent formal jokes. Those opening credit sequences where the chalkboard message tells you something small about the episode's theme, or simply makes a joke for its own sake. He writes, "I will not waste chalk." He writes, "I did not see Elvis." He writes, "I will not call my teacher hot stuff." He writes them in sequence, the chalk squeaking, Skinner presumably somewhere in the building feeling vaguely hopeful that this time the lesson will stick. It never sticks, which is fine. The boarding is not designed to produce learning. It is designed to consume time, and time is what Bart has in abundance. The relationship between Bart and his teacher Mrs. Krabappel is one of the show's most quietly complicated relationships. She is tired in the way that teachers in underfunded schools become tired after years of the combination of genuine effort and inadequate support. She marks papers with the red pen of someone who gave up on being encouraging sometime around the mid-80s. She smokes in the classroom in early seasons. She grades on a curve that is so generous it has ceased to be a curve and become more of a gentle decline. But she likes Bart, somewhere under all of it. She sees something in him that the structured environment of the school cannot reach. There are moments when their sparring tips into something genuinely affectionate, when the antagonist roles they have each been assigned become something more complicated. She wrote him a letter of recommendation once. It was honest in its assessment of his academic performance and warm in its assessment of him as a person. She said he had potential she had never been able to unlock, but had never stopped believing existed. He received an F on the test she gave the same week. There is an episode in which Bart, through a series of circumstances that involve a snow day and a grudge against Skinner, manages to get Skinner fired and replaced with a new principal who immediately becomes beloved by the entire school. The new principal is everything Skinner is not: dynamic, encouraging, willing to listen, genuinely enthusiastic about education in a way that has not been worn smooth by decades of institutional resistance. Bart immediately begins to miss Skinner. Not because Skinner was better, but because the dynamic with Skinner was his. The antagonism had a shape he understood, and without it Bart felt unmoored. He spent the episode trying to get Skinner reinstated, which he eventually accomplished, and Skinner returned to his office, and Bart returned to detention, and the balance was restored. There is something very Springfield about this. The desire for things to be exactly as they were, even if exactly as they were, was not good, because it was at least familiar. Springfield is a town that likes its particular shape of dysfunction, because that shape is known. The El Barto mythology runs through the show like an underground river. El Barto is Bart's graffiti alias, the name he leaves on walls and surfaces around Springfield. The police have an open file on El Barto. Chief Wiggum has been trying to identify El Barto for years, The identity is, to anyone with eyes, not a mystery. Wiggum has not figured it out. The show treats this as a gag, but there is a reading in which Wiggum knows perfectly well who El Barto is and has chosen not to pursue it because Bart is 10 and pursuing it would require paperwork and probably some kind of institutional response that would involve more work than Wiggum is willing to commit to on a Tuesday. Bart's emotional episodes are the ones that stayed. The show built most of its comedy around Homer and the spectacle of his disasters, but it built most of its heart around Bart in the quieter moments. There is an episode in which he connects with a stray dog, a dog he names Laddie after a Lassie-type television character, and the dog is extraordinary. Highly trained, brilliant, responsive, capable of things that Santa's little helper has never even approached. And Bart has to decide whether to keep the dog that loves him back but belongs to someone else, or return it to its owner. He returns it. He does this without fanfare. He just does the right thing, quietly, in a way the show does not make too much of. And then he comes home and sits with Santa's little helper and appreciates what he has instead of what he gave up. There is the episode in which Bart gets a teacher named Bergstrom, played by Dustin Hoffman under a pseudonym, who is everything Springfield Elementary has never been for him. Warm, intellectually alive, genuinely interested in his students as people. Bart flourishes. And then Bergstrom leaves. Because substitute teachers leave. Because nothing in Springfield stays. And Bart has to deal with the loss of someone who made him feel capable for the first time. He cries. Bart Simpson, the 10-year-old chaos agent who writes El Barto on water towers and puts thumbtacks on chairs for sport, sits in his room and cries because a good teacher left and took with him the version of Bart that the teacher had briefly made possible. The show does not make this big, it just lets it be true. The relationship between Bart and Lisa is probably the show's most honest depiction of sibling dynamics. They fight constantly. They sabotage each other's projects. They do things to each other that are, in any objective assessment, not kind. And they are also clearly, unmistakably devoted to each other in a way that neither of them would say directly, but that expresses itself in the moments that matter. When Bart is in genuine trouble, Lisa is there. Not loudly. Not with speeches. She just shows up and does what needs to be done, and then lets him have the victory without making too much of her own involvement. And when Lisa is at her most isolated, when the world has been most unkind about her intelligence and her standards, Bart finds a way to acknowledge that she matters. He writes something on her birthday card that surprises her. He stands up for her in a situation where it cost him something. He is, when it counts, a good brother. The summer episodes, the ones where school is out and Bart has nothing structured to push against, have a wandering quality that the show uses well. Bart at loose ends is Bart at his most interesting because the prank infrastructure is not available, and what remains is a 10-year-old trying to figure out what he actually wants when the performance of wanting to cause trouble is temporarily off the table. He usually wants to do something with his hands. He builds things. He fixes things, occasionally. There is an episode in which he spends a summer helping a farmer with some repairs, and the manual work produces in him a focused, content version of himself that the town rarely gets to see. He does not tell anyone at school about it. It is his. Springfield at night, seen from Bart's bedroom window, is a specific view. The streetlight outside, the Flanders house across the way with its manicured lawn, the distant glow of the cooling towers. Somewhere out there, El Barto's name on a wall, slightly faded now, with another name next to it that belongs to whoever did it the week after. He is asleep now. Or almost. The skateboard is propped against the wall. Tomorrow there will be something inadvisable to do. Tonight the room is quiet. You are quiet too. Good. Lisa Simpson is 8 years old and has known since she was very young that the town she lives in is not designed for her. This is not bitterness speaking, it is observation. Springfield is a comfortable place for a specific kind of person. The kind of person who does not push back too hard, who accepts the surface of things without pressing on them, who can sit at Moe's and drink beer and not feel the pull of the larger questions accumulating on the horizon. Lisa is not that kind of person. Lisa feels the pull of every question. She cannot walk past a library without wanting to go in. She cannot hear someone state something incorrectly without wanting to correct them. She cannot watch injustice without wanting to address it, even when addressing it will cost her something, and even when she knows in advance that Springfield will resist correction with an energy that exceeds its enthusiasm for almost anything else. She plays the saxophone. This is the important thing to understand about Lisa. The saxophone is not a hobby or an extracurricular activity. It is where she lives. When the world outside is too much, when the intellectual isolation of being the smartest person in her grade becomes suffocating, when she has been dismissed or ignored or reduced one time too many, Lisa picks up the saxophone and plays something that says all the things she could not find words for. The show has always used Lisa's saxophone as an emotional barometer. When Lisa is happy, the music she plays has a warmth to it. When she is sad, there is a particular quality to the notes that the animators have learned to give a color that sits somewhere between blue and gray. When she is angry, the saxophone is the thing that absorbs it without letting it become destructive. She cannot yell at a town that will not change, she can play at it. Her room is full of books. This is established early and maintained faithfully. The subjects range widely: philosophy, history, science, political theory, literature, music theory, environmental science. She reads things that are too hard for her and understands them well enough to form opinions about them, and not quite well enough to know what she does not yet know, which is true of every intelligent person at every age. She has a journal. The show has dipped into it occasionally, the handwriting careful, the observations far too mature for an 8-year-old, the emotional honesty of the entries, striking precisely because the emotional honesty is unperformed. Nobody reads Lisa's journal. She writes it for herself, and the things she writes in it are the truest things in the show. The episode in which Lisa falls into depression is one of the show's most carefully handled. It does not dramatize it. It does not give it a villain or a resolution that feels too clean. Lisa simply cannot get out of bed one morning. The world has stopped feeling like it matters in the way it used to matter, and she cannot locate the mechanism that made it feel important before. Homer tries to help. He makes her breakfast. He sits next to her and does not say anything useful, but tries very hard to say something useful, which counts for something. Marge tries to help by scheduling things and organizing activities, which is how Marge helps with everything, and which in this case addresses the symptom rather than the cause. What eventually reaches Lisa is music. A musician she discovers on the radio, and the way the music sounds like someone felt the same thing she is feeling. She is not alone in the depression, the music tells her. Someone else has been here. Someone else made something out of it. She gets up. The episode does not say she is cured. It says she found a reason to keep going today, which is, honestly, the more honest thing to say about these situations. Lisa's relationship with her father is the show's central emotional thread in a way that does not always get the credit it deserves. Homer and Lisa should not make sense as a pair. Their intelligences operate at such different scales that they should not be able to communicate, and they often cannot. Homer does not understand what Lisa is talking about most of the time. He tries to, occasionally, but the gap is very wide. And yet, Homer loves Lisa with a completeness that his limited expressiveness cannot quite contain. He fumbles it. He embarrasses her. He does the wrong thing in front of her friends. He tries to help with her projects and produces disasters. But the love underneath all the fumbling is total and real, and Lisa knows it, and the show knows it, and there are episodes built entirely around the gap between how much Homer loves his daughter and how poorly equipped he is to show it. There is an episode in which Homer reads Lisa's favorite book and tries to discuss it with her so they can have the kind of conversation he senses she needs with someone who is supposed to understand her. He does not understand the book. He understands some of it. He understands enough of it to tell her what he got from it, which is not what she got from it, which is not what anyone else would get from it, but which is genuine and considered and makes Lisa's face do something that is not quite a smile but is adjacent to one. The future episode, Season 6, Lisa's Wedding. A fortune teller at a Renaissance fair shows Lisa a vision of her future, 15 years ahead. She is 23 and about to be married to a British man named Hugh Parkfield, and her future is the future you would build for her if you knew her well. She lives in England. She is clearly brilliant and clearly somewhat lonely still, in the specific way that very intelligent people remain lonely no matter how far they travel from the place that made them feel that way. Springfield is visible in her from the future. You can see the 8-year-old and the 23-year-old, slightly battered by the intervening years but essentially intact. The wedding does not happen. Hugh, confronted with the full reality of the Simpson family, finds that he cannot accept it. He loves Lisa, but he cannot accept what comes with her, which is the yellow house and the orange couch and Homer and Marge and Bart and Santa's little helper and the whole chaotic, imperfect, deeply loved structure of the life she came from. He asks her to leave that behind. She cannot. She comes back from the future to the present, to being 8 years old, to her bedroom and her saxophone and her books. And she knows something now that she did not know before the vision. That she will one day love someone completely and it will not work. And she will survive it. And she will go home to Evergreen Terrace and it will still be home. The knowledge is sad and it is also, strangely, comforting. Her future has grief in it. But it is her grief, shaped around her specific soul. And that means it is real. Which means she is real. She picks up the saxophone. Lisa has run for class president, discovered a comet, saved the school from defunding, exposed environmental contamination, become a vegetarian and held to it for every subsequent episode, won a scholarship, exposed a corrupt local hero, written a book that was published, joined a debate team, and been told in various ways that what she cares about does not matter, and by various people who then learn, usually in the final act of the episode, that it does. She has also been wrong. The show is generous enough to let Lisa be wrong. She has been sanctimonious. She has let righteous anger push her past the point where anyone can hear her. She has assumed that being right makes her way of being right correct, which is a mistake that intelligent people who have been underestimated all their lives often make. The certainty that you are seeing something clearly can make you certain that you are also seeing it the right way, and those are different things. The show does not punish her for these mistakes. It just shows them, and lets her learn from them, and lets her be 8 years old again next episode. There is a saxophone riff that plays when Lisa is alone. The show uses it like a musical signature, something that arrives when the episode has settled around her, when the comedic noise has died down and what remains is just this particular child, with her particular inner life in her particular room. The riff is a little melancholy and a little hopeful at the same time, which is the only accurate description of Lisa Simpson's emotional weather. She is asleep now, in the version of this night where we are watching Springfield sleep. The books are stacked. The saxophone is in its corner. She has a very serious library book on her nightstand that she has been reading for 3 days and will finish tomorrow before breakfast, the way she always does. Her journal is closed. Whatever she wrote today will keep. Outside her window, Springfield continues its impossible existence. The cooling towers glow faintly against the night sky. Somewhere a phone rings at Moe's. Somewhere the Quickie Mart is still open. Lisa sleeps. Springfield is not just the Simpson family. Springfield is an entire ecosystem of people who have somehow, through years of brief appearances and accumulated callbacks and the kind of care that goes into building a fictional community from scratch, become as familiar as anyone you have ever known. Let us start with Ned Flanders, because you cannot talk about Springfield without Ned Flanders. He lives at 740 Evergreen Terrace, which is directly next door to Homer, which is the cruelest possible placement from a city planning perspective. He is kind. He is so thoroughly, consistently kind that it has become a quality that the show has spent 36 years examining from every possible angle, turning it over in the light to see what it is made of and whether it holds up to scrutiny. It mostly holds. The kindness is real. The faith that sustains it is real. And the cost of it, the specific price that Ned pays for being this kind, this consistently in a world that does not reward kindness with proportional returns, is one of the show's quietest tragedies. His wife Maud was killed in a t-shirt cannon incident. This is true within the show's continuity. A t-shirt cannon at the Springfield Speedway misfired, or rather fired correctly at Homer, who dodged, and the shirt hit Maud instead with enough force to knock her from the bleachers. She died. Ned mourned. He forgave Homer. He raised his 2 sons, Rod and Todd, who have inherited his faith and his gentle nature and his slightly terrifying level of compliance with Ned's particular brand of parenting, which is loving and thorough and occasionally involves hymns at a decibel level that the neighbors can hear. Rod and Todd are their own subspecies of Springfield child. They do not have Bart's chaos. They do not have Lisa's fierce curiosity. They have a quality that is harder to describe, something close to innocence but more deliberate. They have been raised so carefully to see the world in a specific way that the world, when it does not cooperate with that vision, seems to genuinely confuse them. They are not dumb. They are just protected in a way that Springfield has never really been designed to accommodate. Ned has been lonely in the years since Maud died. He has dated. He has tried to build something. He eventually marries Edna Krabappel, which is one of the show's stranger pairings on paper and one of its more genuinely touching ones in practice. The skeptical, cigarette-smoking teacher and the relentlessly positive Christian neighbor, finding in each other something that neither expected. The show did not know how to resolve this pairing when the actress who played Krabappel passed away in real life, and it handled it with a quiet grace, letting Ned carry the loss in the background of subsequent episodes in ways that did not demand acknowledgement but were visible to anyone watching closely. Krusty the Clown exists at the center of one of the show's most extended examinations of the gap between performance and person. His real name is Herschel Shmoykel Pinchas Yeruchim Krustovsky. He is the son of a respected rabbi who did not approve of his son becoming a clown, a disapproval that carried significant emotional weight. And produced in Krusty, a man who performs joy professionally and privately experiences something considerably more complicated. The Krusty the Clown Show is the defining media institution of Springfield's children. Every kid in Springfield grew up watching it. The merchandise is everywhere. The catchphrases are embedded in the culture. And behind it, behind the enormous shoes and the green hair and the face paint, is a man with a gambling addiction, multiple tax problems, a complicated relationship with his own health, and a genuine talent for comedy that is often visible even through the layers of commercial degradation the show has accumulated on top of it. Krusty has been declared dead and revived. He has faked his death. He has been revealed as the long-suffering son of a religious man whose blessing he spent decades trying to earn. He has performed in Israel. He has been briefly replaced by Sideshow Bob. He has been to rehab and relapsed and gone back and relapsed again, with the cheerful consistency of someone who has accepted this as part of the rhythm of his life. His relationship with Bart is one of fandom and disillusionment and recovery and fandom again. Bart idolizes Krusty in the early seasons with a purity of devotion that the show treats with great respect. When Krusty is framed for a robbery he did not commit, Bart sets out to clear his name with the conviction of a defense attorney in a capital case. He succeeds. Krusty is freed. The reunion is brief and imperfect, and Krusty moves on quickly because moving on quickly is what Krusty does. But Bart carries the memory of it, with the particular pride of someone who once did something genuinely good. Sideshow Bob deserves his own meditation. Robert Underdunk Terwilliger, Ph.D., who began the show as Krusty's silent sidekick and has spent the ensuing decades in a cycle of elaborate schemes to murder Bart Simpson, each one more operatically designed than the last, and each one defeated through some combination of luck, Bart's reflexive survival instinct, and the show's structural commitment to not killing a 10-year-old. What makes Sideshow Bob one of television's great recurring characters is that he is almost always right about everything except the one thing that matters, which is that the answer to Bart Simpson is not murder. He is brilliant. He is cultured. He quotes Shakespeare fluently and sincerely, which is something almost no one on television manages to do without it feeling performative. He loves opera. He has expressed genuine grief over the vulgarity of popular culture. He ran for mayor. He won, through voter fraud, which he considers a minor procedural issue compared to the broader civic good he believed he represented. His rakes. The rake gag. He steps on a rake. He is hit in the face by the handle. He steps on another rake. He is hit again. This continues for what is, in terms of elapsed screen time, one of the longest sustained jokes in the show's history. The comedy comes entirely from repetition and duration. There is no punchline beyond the fact that it keeps happening, and he keeps making the same noise each time, and the sequence goes on long enough that it stops being a joke about rakes and becomes something like a statement about persistence. Bob eventually has a family. He has a son who is lovely. He has a moment of genuine redemption that the show offers and then partially takes back, because the show needs Bob to keep coming back, and genuine redemption would make that awkward. He carries his complexity with him. Apu Nahasapi Mapedalon runs the Quick E-Mart with a dedication that is partly professional pride and partly the recognition that the Quick E-Mart is Springfield's connective tissue. He has a degree from Caltech. He is one of 8 children. He has octuplets of his own. He has been robbed more times than he can accurately count. He faces daily indignities with a philosophical equanimity that suggests he is either very wise or has simply made peace with the specific chaos of being in the middle of Springfield's supply chain. He is devoted to his work in ways that occasionally cross the line from dedicated into something the show finds gently comic, but that also reads as genuine pride in a thing that is his. The Quick E-Mart is Apu's. He keeps it running. The hot dogs rotate. The squishy machine functions. The frozen food section maintains a temperature that is technically legal. He manages all of this while living above the store, while raising his family, while maintaining membership in a cultural community that Springfield has never fully made room for, but that Apu has never stopped being. Chief Clancy Wiggum is perhaps the most honest depiction of a particular kind of American institution that the show has produced. He is not corrupt in any grand dramatic sense. He is simply comprehensively disengaged from his professional responsibilities in ways that have calcified into a comfortable routine. He does not investigate things that look difficult. He does not follow evidence that goes somewhere inconvenient. He shows up at crime scenes with the energy of a man attending a mild social obligation. He eats. He talks about donuts in ways that suggest his relationship with donuts may be the most serious relationship in his life. He loves his son Ralph with a specific kind of helpless, paternal devotion that is one of the show's most consistently touching small things. Ralph is Ralph, and Wiggum has accepted this fully and without qualification. He does not try to make Ralph different. He does not appear to understand that there might be concern warranted. He watches Ralph be Ralph and beams with paternal pride at a volume that the scene sometimes has to dim down just slightly to keep things in balance. Mo Sizlak, the bar. The face that appears to have been assembled in low light from pieces that came from several different faces. Mo's backstory shifts episode to episode in ways that have never quite resolved into a single coherent history. He was a child actor once. He was a fighter. He has had relationships that the show depicts with genuine warmth and then dissolves for one reason or another, usually because Mo's specific combination of traits is difficult to love consistently without a significant level of patience and tolerance for sudden pivots into the bleak. He is lonely. This is the central fact of Mo. The bar is full of people every night, and Mo is profoundly, architecturally lonely in ways that the show has never been able to fix without it feeling dishonest. He loves Homer's family. When Homer is in trouble, Mo shows up. When Bart has needed something unexpected, Mo has sometimes been the one to provide it, with a gruffness that is clearly embarrassment at the gentleness underneath. There is an episode in which Mo's tavern is briefly transformed into a trendy cocktail bar, and Mo, against his own nature, begins to thrive in this more sophisticated environment. He learns to make cocktails. He develops genuine skill. The bar fills with a different kind of customer, and Mo seems, for the first time in perhaps his entire life, like someone the world around him has room for. Then the regular crowd comes back. Homer and Lenny and Carl return, and the fancy bar cannot survive the specific gravitational pull of Springfield's comfortable decline, and Mo turns back into the Mo he has always been, because that is what Springfield does to its people. It keeps them in the shape they arrived in. He seems, if you look carefully at the episode's final moments, to be okay with this. Not happy, exactly, but okay. Grandpa Abe Simpson lives at the Springfield Retirement Castle, which is an institution that the show treats with a mix of affection and mild horror. It is not a terrible place, but it is a place that elderly people have been put, with all the ambivalence that phrase implies. The residents sit in chairs, they watch television, they tell stories that the younger people around them do not have time for. They eat meals at hours that are not connected to any natural hunger rhythm. Abe tells stories constantly. He has been places, done things, loved people, held down professions, made decisions that he thinks about still. Most of the stories are tangentially connected to whatever point he is trying to make, and then wander off into territory that seemed relevant at the time. He is not making this up. The wandering is the point. He is an old man in a world that has moved past him, trying to stay connected through narrative, through the particular kind of memory that becomes story when you have carried it long enough. He was a soldier. He was a father to Homer in ways that were not quite sufficient and that he knows were not quite sufficient, which is visible in the particular quality of his regret. He tried. He fell short of something he can see clearly now in retrospect. The gap between the father he was and the father Homer needed is something he has been living with for decades. He is asleep in the retirement castle right now, in the version of tonight where Springfield sleeps, dreaming of something from a long time ago. The show does not tell us what, but it was probably good. Every October, Springfield stops being Springfield for 3 stories. The Treehouse of Horror episodes are the show's annual permission slip to become something different, something that operates by different rules than the standard show, where death is temporary and morality is optional, and the characters can be used in ways the regular continuity would never allow. They began in Season 2 with 3 short stories told by Bart and Lisa and Homer in a treehouse, framing device establishing that what followed was fiction even within the show's fiction, a layer of unreality that allowed the writers to go places that the Sunday night family comedy format would otherwise not accommodate. They have continued every season since. There are now over 30 of them. The catalog represents one of the longest-running anthologies in television history, covering horror, science fiction, supernatural comedy, parody, and genuine darkness in roughly equal proportions depending on the year. The first Treehouse episode set the template: 3 segments, each one taking a different genre or source material and running it through Springfield's particular filter. The filter does strange things to horror. Horror in Springfield arrives already adjacent to the absurd, because Springfield is already adjacent to the absurd, and this proximity does not diffuse the horror so much as it creates a new kind of horror, one that is funny and genuinely unsettling in the same breath. The Shining, which is the segment parodying The Shining, is perhaps the most famous of all the Treehouse segments. Mr. Burns hires Homer as the winter caretaker for his remote mountain resort, having removed all the televisions and beer from the property in order to prevent his employees from being distracted. Homer, deprived of his 2 primary coping mechanisms, descends into madness with an efficiency that suggests the madness was not far below the surface to begin with. He stalks his family through the resort. He leaves the same phrase written on every available surface. Groundskeeper Willie, who appears in the segment as the resort's psychic handyman, is murdered before he can help in a way that the segment treats as inevitable. The family escapes. Homer is frozen in the front yard in a pose that manages to be both threatening and somehow comfortable. The segment is funny and also actually scary, in the way that the best horror parodies are scary, by engaging genuinely with the material it is imitating rather than simply referencing it. You laugh because it is The Simpsons. You feel something else because it is actually The Shining. The segment in which aliens Kang and Kodos replace Homer and Bill Clinton ahead of a presidential election is one of the show's most quoted political jokes. The aliens, having taken human form, are discovered by Homer, who reveals their true nature at a public event. The crowd is appalled. And then someone says the quiet part. We cannot simply not vote for one of these 2 candidates. The 2-party system cannot accommodate write-in candidates. We are going to vote for one of these aliens, and there is nothing to be done about it. The joke has aged. It has aged in ways the writers of 1996 could not have fully anticipated but would probably not be surprised by. The segment where Homer finds a portal to a 3-dimensional universe in the wall behind the bookcase remains one of the strangest things the show has ever done. Entering through the bookcase, Homer finds himself in a rendered CGI environment that clashes with his flat animated design in ways that should feel wrong but instead feel like a genuine uncanny valley, a Homer-shaped thing in a world that was not made for Homer shapes. He wanders through this geometric landscape. He is observed from outside the portal by everyone he knows, who watch him from the flat animated world on the other side. He cannot get back. The universe is ending. The mathematical structures around him destabilizing in ways that are both visually striking and philosophically unsettling. He falls through into the real world, our world, the live-action world, which turns out to be downtown Burbank, and he immediately finds a donut shop. The segment is 8 minutes long, and it does things that primetime animated comedies simply do not do, both technically and narratively, and it does them in October of 1995, which means it did them before most of the tools that would make them easier even existed. The King Homer segment, in which the Simpsons universe is placed in a 30s black and white setting, and the story of King Kong is retold with Homer as the giant ape, is a quieter kind of horror than most of the anthology. It is mostly gentle and funny, but there is a reading of King Homer, the creature worshipped on an island and brought to civilization and destroyed by his presence in it, as a meditation on Homer's entire character that the show probably did not intend, but that exists anyway. The way meanings grow in things without the author's direct involvement. The segment in which the family discovers they can control reality through a voodoo doll is one of the darker comedy segments, structured as a series of escalating consequences for playing with something that should not be played with, and that the show treats with a lightness that barely covers the genuine nastiness of what is happening in the plot. Characters are hurt. Characters are killed. The family negotiates its own survival with a pragmatism that is funny and also slightly horrifying in its clarity. There are segments built around alien invasions, government conspiracies, supernatural revenge plots, demonic deals, and time travel that produces catastrophic butterfly effects. Homer travels back to prehistoric times and steps on something small and wrong, and returns to a world that has changed in increments with every additional mistake he makes in the past. And the joke is that each iteration of the changed present is slightly more or less acceptable to Homer by different measures. And he keeps going back to fix things, and each fix produces a new problem, and the world keeps reshaping itself around his errors. He returns eventually to a present that is almost right. The family is there, mostly as he remembers them. He decides this is good enough and resolves not to go back. The family has lizard tongues, which he notices but decides to be fine with. This is Homer's philosophy in 20 seconds. Good enough is good enough if the people he loves are in the room. The Halloween anthology format has also given the show permission to kill characters in ways the regular series never would. Bart has been killed, Lisa has been killed. Homer, Marge, and Maggie have all been killed. The kills are temporary, contained within their segment, but the show takes them seriously enough to do them well, to construct deaths that carry weight even when you know they will not persist, because the emotion of loss does not require permanence to be real. There is a segment involving a stopwatch that can pause time, which Homer acquires and immediately begins using for extremely personal and largely unheroic purposes. The segment is funny. It is also, if you sit with it, a story about what a man does when he is given total freedom from consequence, and the answer is both very Homer-specific and distressingly universal. The anthology has produced its share of genuine scares over the years. The nightmare cafeteria, in which the school runs out of food and begins processing students, is one of the show's more legitimately disturbing segments, played straighter than most and landing closer to actual body horror than the show's general register. The Demon Homer segment, in which Homer sells his soul for a donut and is sent to hell for partially eating said donut and regrets nothing while in hell because the donut was very good, is more playful but has its own darkness underneath the playfulness. The segment in which a ghost haunts the family's house and turns out to be a murdered previous resident who wants his murderer acknowledged is played with surprising sincerity. The ghost is not a joke. The history is not a joke. The request for acknowledgement is not a joke. The show gives the ghost something real to want. The anthology also gave us Kang and Kodos, the show's recurring alien characters who appear in nearly every Halloween episode and have become their own institution. They are genuinely sinister when the show wants them to be, and genuinely silly when that serves better, and the show has never fully committed to either mode, keeping them suspended between menace and absurdity in ways that mirror the anthology's overall tone. The production of each Halloween episode is one of the show's most consistent creative pleasures. The title cards are decorated. The character names in the credits are altered. The couch gag becomes something dark. The show announces from its first frame that you are in a different Springfield tonight. A Springfield where the rules are suspended and anything might happen. And for 3 stories every October, you go there. The town is darker at night in October. The leaves are down. The Quickie Mart has orange and black decorations in the window. The retirement castle has a single pumpkin near the entrance. And in the treehouse in the backyard of the Simpson house, Bart is telling a story to Lisa about something that should frighten her, but mostly just makes her ask questions about the logic of the supernatural world he has constructed. She has a lot of questions, she always does. It is October tonight if you want it to be. It can always be October in Springfield. Close your eyes. The stories are starting. The Simpsons has had more celebrity guest appearances than any other show in the history of television. This is not hyperbole. The list runs to hundreds of names, covering musicians, actors, politicians, athletes, scientists, authors, comedians, and at least one former Secretary of State. They have appeared as themselves, as characters with names, as voice-only presences, as figures around whom entire episodes were constructed. The guest stars changed the shape of the show in ways that are still being understood. In the early seasons, guests were relatively rare, and each one felt like an event. Michael Jackson called the show's production team and asked to appear. He did not want credit. He performed under a pseudonym. His character was a large white man named Leon Kompowski, who believed he was Michael Jackson. And the show used this premise to do something genuinely unusual, which was to explore what happens when someone claims an identity that is not theirs, and the people around them have to decide whether the claim matters or the person does. The episode ends with Bart's birthday, and Leon, the large white man who may or may not be Michael Jackson, sings a song he has written especially for Lisa, a birthday song that Lisa has been feeling the absence of all episode. The song is sweet and simple and performed by a man who may be a psychiatric patient, or maybe Michael Jackson pretending to be a psychiatric patient. And it does not matter which, because Lisa gets her birthday song, and that is the point. The guest appearances that work best are the ones that found something genuine to do with the person. Johnny Cash as the mystical coyote in Homer's Chili Fever Dream. The coyote speaks to Homer with a simplicity and directness that Cash's voice transforms into something almost sacred. He tells Homer to find his soulmate. He runs beside Homer through a desert that is clearly not an actual desert. That is the interior landscape of Homer's overheated mind, and the advice he gives is good advice even if Homer will have difficulty acting on it. Elizabeth Taylor as the voice of Maggie speaking her first word. One word, Daddy, in a voice that transformed a single syllable into a crystallized moment of pure parental joy and gave Maggie a rare speaking moment that the show has never repeated, which is exactly the right choice, because some things should happen only once to matter at all. Dustin Hoffman, under a pseudonym because he was uncomfortable with the association at the time, as Bart's substitute teacher Mr. Bergstrom. He made the character extraordinary. The warmth in Bergstrom is entirely in the performance, in the voice Hoffman brings to a character who exists for one episode and becomes one of the show's most memorable secondary figures. Paul McCartney, appearing in the episode that explores Lisa's decision to become a vegetarian, with the condition that Lisa remain a vegetarian in perpetuity across all future episodes. The show agreed. Lisa has been a vegetarian since. This is one of the most remarkable consequences of a guest appearance in television history. A musician's appearance in a cartoon negotiated a permanent character trait that has been honored in every subsequent episode for decades. The Rolling Stones appeared in a crowd at a concert. Ringo Starr appeared to respond personally to every piece of fan mail he received, a task that had accumulated to decades' worth of unanswered correspondence, and does so in an episode that is both funny and quietly touching in its depiction of someone trying to honor something they had neglected. Stephen Hawking has appeared multiple times, always as himself, always with the specific quality of a person who finds the absurdity of his situation in the show genuinely amusing, and does not feel the need to perform his dignity to protect it. He has contributed to the show's comedy with a directness and wit that suggests he understood exactly what he was doing there. James Brown appeared. Mel Brooks appeared. The Ramones appeared at Mr. Burns' birthday party and performed a punk version of Happy Birthday that Burns did not enjoy, immediately requesting something more refined afterward, which the show cuts away from because some moments are better left to the imagination. Albert Brooks has appeared in the show multiple times, usually as a fast-talking character whose intelligence creates its own comedy. He improvises extensively. The show has incorporated his improvisations. His characters tend to be the smartest person in a room full of people who do not know what to do with that, which is a dynamic that Springfield understands very well. Tom Jones appeared as himself, performing in a Las Vegas-adjacent setting, and found something that allowed him to be funny without requiring him to be undignified, which is the successful formula for celebrity appearances in the show. The show does not make celebrities look bad. It makes them look like versions of themselves that exist in a world where the rules are slightly different, and the best response to those different rules is genuine engagement, rather than protective distance. There is an entire category of appearances by political figures, some of them sitting politicians at the time, that carry a different weight depending on when you are watching. Bill Clinton appeared. George H.W. Bush appeared and lived next door to The Simpsons briefly, in an episode that became one of the show's most sustained political comedy exercises. The show was unsparing about him, and eventually affectionate about him, which is perhaps the most honest trajectory for how most people come to feel about former presidents with the distance of years. Tony Blair appeared. The Queen appeared, in a manner that was fictional but based on enough research to feel grounded. Members of foreign governments appeared in ways that demonstrated the show's awareness that it was watched globally and that an international audience deserved occasionally to see their own politics reflected in Springfield's funhouse mirror. Musicians brought their catalogs into Springfield in ways that changed how episodes felt. The Who's music played during a period of particular emotional weight. U2 appeared at a concert that the show used to make a point about the relationship between celebrity activism and genuine change that was sharper than the episode's surrounding plot required. Cypress Hill appeared and accidentally booked the London Symphony Orchestra, and then years later in reality booked the London Symphony Orchestra, as if the show had issued an invitation that the universe eventually accepted. The guest appearances that did not work are the ones that treated the celebrity as a spectacle rather than a character. When the show became more famous than some of its guests, when the presence of the celebrity added nothing to the story but the celebrity's name in the credits, the appearances began to feel like wallpaper. The show's later seasons contain many of these cameos that exist because the show had established a culture of celebrity appearances, and the culture had to be maintained. But the ones that worked, those are still vivid. They feel less like celebrity appearances and more like encounters. Michael Jackson's birthday song to Lisa, Johnny Cash's voice across the desert of Homer's fever, Elizabeth Taylor saying "Daddy" in a way that made a moment of a single word. Guest stars at their best did not come to Springfield. They became part of Springfield for one episode and left something behind when they went. Springfield has accumulated, over 36 years, a body of unresolved mysteries that would keep a dedicated archivist occupied for years. These are not the dramatic mysteries, not the "who shot Mr. Burns" question or the Homer coma theory. These are the smaller ones, the things that were introduced and then set aside, the plot threads that were pulled and then quietly tucked back without resolution, the moments that were dropped into episodes like stones into water, producing ripples that no subsequent episode ever acknowledged. Consider the skeletons in the basement of the nuclear plant. This detail has been discussed in context of the Safety Violations Tour, but it deserves its own attention. Human skeletons, multiple of them, in the basement of an operating nuclear facility in a residential town. No origin provided, no investigation initiated, no subsequent mention of them in any episode. They were shown to exist. Springfield shrugged. The tour continued. Who were those people? That is not a question the show has any interest in answering, and its disinterest has always felt like a choice rather than an oversight. There is the matter of the occasional random character who appears in one episode with a level of detail and investment that suggests they are being established for something and then vanishes from the show entirely. Springfield has a population that the show gestures at being several thousand people, and within that population there are figures who orbit the main characters for one episode and then evaporate. Some of them have names. Some of them have defined relationships with the family. Some of them have backstories that the episode builds as if they will matter in future installments. They do not come back. This could be the show's floating timeline, refusing to commit to additions that would complicate things. It could be writing room decisions about characters that did not fit. Or it could be treated, under the right interpretive framework, as Springfield doing what Springfield does, absorbing people into itself without necessarily retaining them, the town's peculiar relationship with continuity expressed through minor characters who appear and disappear like weather systems. The town of Shelbyville exists as Springfield's rival, established early in the show's history and revisited several times. Shelbyville is to Springfield what a mirror might be to a face, similar enough to make the comparison inevitable, different enough for the comparison to sting. The rivalry has no official origin that the show has fully committed to, a founding dispute that exists in several contradictory versions, and the enmity has persisted across generations without anyone in either town being quite sure what they are still angry about. The Shelbyville residents look exactly like Springfield residents. The show does not pretend otherwise. They have the same proportions, the same yellow skin, the same 4 fingers. Whatever made Springfield residents look the way they look also affects Shelbyville, which raises questions about whether the contamination theory extends beyond Springfield's borders or whether Shelbyville has its own power plant situation. The show does not raise this question. We are raising it here, quietly, at whatever hour it is where you are. There is the question of what happened to characters who were established as significant and then quietly reduced to background figures. Principal Skinner's complicated history, the real Seymour Skinner exiled to a train and the imposter Armin Tamzarian reclaiming the role, sits in the show's continuity as an acknowledged fact that the show has agreed to stop discussing. The real Skinner is out there somewhere. This has not been revisited. He was sent away on a train, and the judge made it illegal to mention him, and that is where things stand, which means the real Seymour Skinner is the only character in Springfield history who was literally banished by legal decree. His fate is one of the show's most unresolved threads. Not the most dramatic, but the one that, under a certain kind of attention, becomes genuinely sad. A man who survived a prisoner of war camp, who made it home, who found his identity stolen, who told the truth and was punished for it, who was tied to a train and sent into exile while the town closed ranks behind the lie. He is out there. He probably has a life. He probably does not think about Springfield anymore, or tries not to. The monorail. The Simpsons monorail episode is one of the show's most beloved, a musical comedy about a fast-talking salesman who cons Springfield into purchasing a monorail it does not need with money it does not have. The monorail is built. Homer is trained as its conductor. The monorail is launched. The monorail immediately begins experiencing mechanical failures at a scale that suggests the salesman may not have been entirely forthcoming about its operational integrity. Homer stops it. Through improvisation and a specific piece of knowledge about the emergency anchor, he stops the runaway monorail and the town survives. The monorail track still exists in Springfield's infrastructure, by the show's occasional acknowledgement. It goes nowhere now, or somewhere. The infrastructure of a municipal transit system that lasted one episode sits in the town's landscape like a monument to a very expensive mistake that nobody talks about but also nobody took down. Springfield keeps its mistakes visible, but does not discuss them. It is a consistent approach. There are also the dreams. Not Homer's potential ongoing coma dream, but the regular, episodic dreams that characters have throughout the show's run. Springfield dreams are very strange. They are not the dreams of people with ordinary psychology. They have a visual logic that the show's animation department clearly enjoyed exploring. Homer's dreams in particular take the form of the particular interior landscape of a man who is constitutionally unable to maintain anxiety about anything that is not immediately in front of him. The dreams are therefore more relaxed than dreams have any right to be. Marge's dreams are the ones the show has returned to less frequently, which is itself interesting, because Marge is clearly the character with the most suppressed material that dreams would logically surface. When the show does go inside Marge's sleeping mind, the results are often surprising, more complex, more architecturally elaborate than Homer's comfortable dreamscapes. Marge dreams about things she cannot say in the day. The show lets her say them at night. The mystery of what Springfield's water actually contains has technically been addressed via the three-eyed fish and the general contamination mythology, but has never been resolved in any institutional sense. The water is still coming from the same place. People are still drinking it. The town has technically been informed through the three-eyed fish incident that something is wrong with the downstream water quality, has processed this information, and has continued drinking the water and presumably always will. Burns's medical records, if they exist in any form that could be accessed, would constitute one of the great historical documents in the show's internal mythology. The weekly treatments, the disease equilibrium, the approximate timeline of his longevity, and the mechanisms that have maintained it. None of this has been formally documented within the show. Burns has personal physicians. Those physicians presumably have records. The records are presumably in a location that no one outside Burns's immediate circle will ever be permitted to see. The show has occasionally gestured at the existence of Burns's private files on the residents of Springfield. He knows things. He has documents. The surveillance he maintains on the people around him is sketched in rather than depicted fully, but the implication is consistent. Burns has information about everyone. He has had the capacity to gather it and the motivation to use it. What that information contains, how current it is, how precisely it tracks the lives of the people he employs, and the town he essentially owns, is one of the show's most interesting unaddressed implications. Springfield has also had several apocalypse-adjacent events that did not result in an apocalypse. The dome, the comet, the multiple near meltdowns at the plant, a killer asteroid that the show constructed an episode around and then resolved with cheerful improbability, a plague of locusts, a series of events in various Halloween episodes that, if they had occurred in the regular continuity, would have fundamentally altered the town's existence. They did not alter anything. The events happened, and the town continued. The reset is total and consistent. But the accumulated weight of all those almost catastrophes sits beneath the surface of Springfield in ways that the show acknowledges through the occasional knowing wink. The town has survived things. The town keeps surviving things. The reasons are either logical, within the show's various theoretical frameworks, or they are simply the show's promise to its audience that Springfield will be here next week. The show keeps its promise. Both of those things are true. They are not in conflict. Let them coexist in your mind as you drift. The unresolved mysteries of Springfield are not demanding resolution tonight. They are just there, part of the texture of the town, the loose threads in the fabric that you can feel but do not need to pull. Some things are better as questions than as answers. The cooling towers are still steaming. The mystery remains. The town sleeps. Every episode of The Simpsons begins the same way. The clouds part. The camera drifts through them and arrives over Springfield, descending toward the elementary school. Bart is at the blackboard writing something. The school bell rings. He escapes. Lisa is in band class, playing a saxophone line that is always slightly different, always slightly more elaborate than the standard melody. She gets kicked out of class for the complexity of her improvisation. Marge pushes a shopping cart through the Quickie Mart with Maggie in the child seat, and at checkout the cashier rings up Maggie along with the groceries as if she were just another item. And Marge pulls her back with the calm efficiency of a woman who has done this every single week for 36 years and has made peace with it. Homer is finishing his shift at the plant, tucking something radioactive into his shirt pocket on his way out the door. The family converges from all their separate corners of Springfield, each racing toward home, and they arrive at the orange couch simultaneously and sit down, and the show begins. This sequence has been running since 1989, with variations, and the variations are themselves one of the show's most discussed ongoing experiments. The couch gag. Whatever happens at the end of the opening sequence, just before the family sits down, has been different in nearly every episode the show has produced. The early couch gags were brief and simple. A quick visual joke, the family arrives and something unusual has occupied their couch. A piece of furniture has been replaced. Another family is sitting there. The couch is a boat. Simple things. Then the couch gags began to expand. They became longer, more elaborate, more willing to exist in the space between joke and art. They began to be produced by guest directors and animators from other studios and traditions. They began to break the fourth wall in ways the show's main content never would. They began to take the couch as a starting point and go somewhere the show itself could never travel. Banksy directed a couch gag. It begins with the standard opening and then continues into a long sequence depicting the overseas manufacturing of Simpsons merchandise under conditions that are not comfortable to observe. The animation shifts in quality. Workers labor in conditions that comment directly on the economics of the show's own production. The couch gag ran during the show's broadcast and produced more discussion than most of the episodes it preceded. Don Hertzfeldt, an animator known for his particular style of deliberately crude line drawing and extremely dark philosophical humor, produced a couch gag set in the far future in which the Simpson family has degraded into something that is barely recognizable, fragments of the original characters stretched and distorted across a timeline that has continued long past any reasonable expiration date. The couch gag is genuinely unsettling in ways that function as parody but also as something the show would never say about itself directly. Hertzfeldt said it for them, in 2 minutes. And then the episode began. Other studios produced couch gags in their own visual styles. The Family Guy crossover was announced and prefaced by a couch gag in the Family Guy visual language. Adventure Time produced one. Guillermo del Toro produced one that was a comprehensive catalog of horror film references that the internet spent weeks unpacking. The couch gag had become a canvas that the show was lending out to artists who wanted to do something with Springfield that the show's regular format could not accommodate. The title sequence itself contains details that reward close attention. The cloud that the camera passes through at the opening has shadows and formations that shift from episode to episode, a small variation that nobody was expected to notice but that was placed there anyway. The school bus has passengers that change. Background characters visible in the establishing shots of Springfield's skyline shift positions. The Quickie Mart's rotating hot dogs are rotating at slightly different speeds in different episodes, a detail so small that it is essentially invisible and was therefore probably placed there by someone who found it funny to include something essentially invisible. The credits have their own history. Character names in the Treehouse of Horror episodes are altered to suggest horror movie personas. Writers' names become sinister. Crew members get Halloween-adjacent credits that are often funnier than they have any obligation to be. The show's awareness of its own credits as a canvas for humor runs through its entire history. The music. Danny Elfman composed the main theme, that bright, slightly manic fanfare that opens every episode and that has been running in the background of American popular culture for so long that it has become part of the sonic furniture of the last 3 decades. It is recognizable within its first 2 notes to almost anyone who grew up anywhere near a television in the 90s. It does something specific to your nervous system when you hear it. Something in the range of happy combined with something in the range of home, combined with something in the range of, here we go. The incidental music throughout the show has its own vocabulary. Alf Clausen composed it for most of the show's run. A staggering catalog of music written specifically for individual scenes, parodies of specific genres, musical numbers that the show has always been willing to produce at length and with genuine craft. The show has done full Broadway-style musical numbers. It has done opera, it has done barbershop, it has done country and western and rock and jazz and classical, and the kind of music that only exists in cartoons when someone is running very fast. The sound design of Springfield is something that people who grew up watching the show carry in their auditory memory without quite realizing it. The specific way the quick E-Mart door sounds when it opens. The hum of the refrigerator at 742 Evergreen. The particular quality of Homer's voice when he is talking to himself, which is slightly different from his voice when he is talking to other people. Slightly more honest, slightly more direct, as if the removal of an audience makes him capable of things he cannot quite manage in company. The background details are a category unto themselves. The show has always rewarded viewers who pause and look at what is in the frame beyond the main action. Bookshelves in the background of scenes contain titles that comment on the episode's themes. Signs on Springfield streets make jokes that the camera passes without emphasis. Storefront names are puns that range from groan-worthy to genuinely clever to the kind of thing that only becomes funny after you have been looking at it for a few seconds. The newspaper that characters read has headlines. The menus in restaurants have items. The chalkboards in classrooms have content. The show has been filling these spaces for 3 decades, and the cumulative effect of all that background detail is a world that feels genuinely inhabited, a town that existed before the camera arrived and will exist after it leaves. There are fans who have cataloged every background joke in the show. The level of dedication this required is impressive and also slightly indicative of something about what the show does to people. It makes you want to look closer. It makes you feel that there is always something you have not noticed yet. Some joke hiding in the corner of a frame that was placed there for the one viewer who would pause at exactly the right moment. The opening sequence has changed over the years in ways that track the show's own history. New characters have been added to the Springfield establishing shots as they became recurring figures. The music has been updated slightly. The animation quality has evolved in ways that track the industry's evolution from cell animation to digital. An HD version of the sequence was produced when the show transitioned to high-definition broadcast, and this version added additional detail to Springfield's skyline and changed the proportions slightly, which produced a reaction from longtime viewers disproportionate to the actual significance of the change, but which makes sense given how deeply the original sequence is embedded in people's visual memory. Maggie's price at the supermarket checkout has been a running joke that changed over the years. In earlier seasons, she rang up at a price that was a joke about the cost of living. Later seasons updated the amount as actual economic conditions changed, which made the joke more accurate and also slightly more depressing, which is a ratio the show has always been comfortable with. The clouds at the beginning of the opening sequence, the specific shape of them, the quality of the light behind them as the camera descends toward Springfield, have always had the quality of a dream beginning. The way a specific kind of dream begins, not with darkness or sudden presence in a scene, but with gradual arrival, the sense of approaching somewhere rather than being deposited there. You come down through those clouds and Springfield assembles itself below you, and there is a moment every episode when the familiar theme is playing and the familiar skyline is taking shape, where you are genuinely happy to be back. That is what the opening sequence has always been for. Not information, not setup, just the feeling of returning somewhere that always takes you back. You are there now. The credits are playing. Springfield is below you, assembled and waiting, yellow and impossible and exactly as you remember it. Come down through the clouds. You are home. The show is known for its comedy, its absurdism, its cultural criticism, its celebrity cameos and surreal plots, and the particular anarchic energy of its peak seasons. What it is less often discussed for, despite being one of television's finest achievements in this regard, is its capacity for genuine emotional devastation. The Simpsons has made people cry more times than it is comfortable to admit, and it has done it quietly, without warning, buried inside episodes that were otherwise entirely comedic, the emotional gut punch arriving so unexpectedly that the shift in register felt almost violent. You were laughing, and then you were not. And then the credits were rolling and you were sitting with something that was going to take a while to set down. Homer's mother. The episode called Mother Simpson is perhaps the single most emotionally direct episode the show has ever produced. Not sad in an oblique way. Sad in the way that real things are sad, the specific weight of lost time, the specific texture of reunion that cannot undo loss. Only sit beside it. Homer finds his mother, Mona Simpson, played with tremendous warmth and an equally tremendous quietness by Glenn Close, has been alive all along. She has been in hiding, unable to come home because Burns was hunting her, because Abe did not tell the truth, because the machinery of a very specific set of decisions made 30 years ago conspired to keep her away from her son. They have a few days. They talk, they cook. Homer shows her his life, the life she was not there for, and she looks at it with the expression of someone doing an accounting that is going to come out painful no matter how you run the numbers. He is mostly good. She can see that he is mostly good. She can see Marge and the children and the house and the particular rough-edged but genuine shape of the life he built without her. She can see that he survived her absence. She can also see what the absence cost. She leaves again because she has to, because Burns sees her from a cab window and calls the FBI, because the world does not offer the option she and Homer both want. She goes. Homer watches the cab pull away. The final shot of the episode is Homer, standing outside, alone, looking up at the sky, at the stars, thinking something the show does not say and does not need to. The music plays. The shot holds for several seconds longer than it needs to in order to be a closing shot. It holds because the show knows what this moment is and is unwilling to rush away from it. He was looking for his mother his whole life and he found her and lost her again. And the stars were there the whole time, which is a fact about the universe that is both comforting and completely insufficient. The episode does not end with a joke. There is no reset. No winking at the audience to let them know the sadness is temporary. The episode ends where it ends, with Homer outside and the night sky above him, and then the credits roll. The You Only Move Twice episode is primarily famous as a comedy masterpiece. Homer working for a Bond villain-type employer named Hank Scorpio who is genuinely charming and supportive and happens to be pursuing world domination on the side. The episode is extraordinarily funny, and underneath it, running quietly, is a genuinely sad observation about the way circumstances can place the right person in your life at exactly the wrong time. Homer thrives at Globex. He is appreciated there. Scorpio knows his name, values his work, treats him as a person worth knowing. This is everything Homer has always wanted from Mr. Burns and never received. And Homer cannot stay, because Marge is miserable, and Lisa cannot find her group, and Bart has been placed in a remedial class, and Maggie has taken her first steps in a house that is not home. The family needs to go back. Homer leaves the best job he has ever had, and the employer who most appreciated him, because the alternative is being right and alone. He returns to Springfield. He returns to Burns, who still does not know his name. He returns to Sector 7G, and he seems, somehow, fine with it, because he is back where his people are. The episode does not linger on this. It is a comedy. But the last moment, Scorpio sending Homer a gift in thanks, a small token of genuine appreciation from the best boss he ever had, the show holds on Homer's face for just a second, and there is something in it that you can see if you are looking. Lisa's grief episode, the one in which her regular state of sensitive engagement with the world tips over into something that the show names as depression, has been discussed, but the texture of the episode's resolution deserves more attention. It is not a happy ending. The saxophone finds her, music finds her, and she gets up. But the getting up is not a cure. It is a beginning. It is the daily act of deciding to continue that is at the center of every real recovery, and the show understands this well enough not to put a bow on it. The Bart Gets an F episode is one of the show's earliest emotional gut punches, arriving in the middle of Season 2 when the show's tonal range was still being established. Bart is going to fail 4th grade. He studies, genuinely, for the first time. He studies all night. He goes in and takes the test and he fails anyway, by 1 point. He cries. Bart Simpson, the chaos engine, the chronic detention resident, the prankster and the rebel, sits in the classroom and cries with the specific despair of someone who tried and still failed, which is a different and harder kind of failure than the kind you produce through not trying. The teacher, for once, is genuinely moved by his effort and gives him 1 extra point on a piece of creative writing he did about the historical significance of snow. It is enough. He passes. But the moment that stays is not the passing. It is the crying. The specific vulnerability of Bart in that moment, the 10-year-old who has been performing invulnerability as a survival strategy and who cannot perform it anymore because the failure is real and the effort was real, and neither is small enough to shrug off. The episode is often listed as one of the show's best because it is. The comedy around it is good, the emotional core is extraordinary. Homer and Apu have an episode that is primarily about Apu's relationship with the quick E-Mart but contains, in its final minutes, a conversation between Homer and Marge that is so direct and so honest about the gap between what we want our marriages to be and what they sometimes are, that it functions almost as a separate, smaller episode embedded within the main story. They talk about whether they are still good together, the way long-married people sometimes have to talk about it. And the talk is scary in the way that real conversations about real things are scary, and the conclusion they reach is real too, not performed contentment, but the decision that what they have is worth the effort of continuing to choose it. The Lisa's Substitute episode has been discussed in terms of Mr. Bergstrom, but the emotional weight of it extends beyond the substitute teacher. It extends to the note he leaves Lisa when he goes. He writes her a note. She asks him who she is, and he says that the note will tell her. The note says her name, and then it says that is all she needs to know. An 8-year-old girl who has felt invisible and different and wrong for being what she is reads that her name is sufficient identity. That being Lisa Simpson is enough. She does not need to be more. She does not need to be simpler. She just needs to be the person she is, whose name is all she needs to know. She reads the note. She puts it away. She picks up the saxophone. The funeral episodes. Springfield has had deaths within the main continuity that the show handled with a care that was unusual for a primetime comedy. Maud Flanders' death. The show constructed an episode around her death that was not played for comedy, that looked at the specific texture of sudden loss and the specific bewilderment of the person left behind. Ned's grief was real, and the show sat with it, not comfortably, without the reassurance that things would be fine, with just the honest weight of the fact that Maud was gone, and Ned did not know what to do without her. The show killed her partly for logistical reasons related to the actress's contract situation. It handled the death with more grace than that context might have produced. The episode in which Bart and Homer reconcile after a period of genuine estrangement, in which the distance between them closes not through comedy but through the quiet admission that they need each other, is one of the show's gentlest and best moments. Homer tries to express something that he does not have the vocabulary for. Bart understands it anyway. They both understand that the understanding is happening even though the words are not quite right. The scene does not make it bigger than it is. It is just two people in a living room figuring out that they love each other and that the love is enough even if the expression of it is imperfect. These are the episodes that stay in the places where the funny ones do not quite reach. The corner of the memory reserved for things that moved you when you were not prepared to be moved. The show has always known it was funny. It has always known it was smart. What it has not always said clearly, what it has mostly let speak for itself, is that it knew it was good, not just good television. Good in the way that things can be good when they are made with genuine care about the humans they are depicting and the humans who will watch the depiction. The Simpsons cares about its family. You can feel it in every episode, even the bad ones. Even the ones that are clearly not fully formed. Even the ones that feel like obligations met rather than stories told. Underneath everything, the show cares about Homer and Marge and Bart and Lisa and Maggie. And that care is what has kept people coming back for 36 years. Not the celebrity cameos, not the predictions, not the cultural relevance or the critical esteem or the merchandise. The family, the love inside the family, imperfect and genuine, exactly like the real thing. Let that sit for a moment. You have people. Wherever you are right now, tonight, in whatever city or room or bed, you have people. Maybe they are nearby. Maybe they are far away. Maybe they are complicated the way families are always complicated, or simple the way the best friendships can be simple, or somewhere in between. Most things. The show has been telling you for 36 years that the imperfect people you love are worth the effort. That the orange couch with the wrong-shaped people on it is worth more than any better arrangement. Homer knows this. Even Homer knows this. The night is quiet now. Let it be quiet. It is late in Springfield. The hour is not specific, because the hour in Springfield has never been entirely consistent with the hour anywhere else. Time in this town has its own relationship with the clock. Loose and approximate, more concerned with the feeling of the hour than its exact numerical location. But it is late. You can tell by the quality of the light, the amber from the streetlights replacing the broader daytime illumination. The Quickie Mart's fluorescence visible from blocks away against the now dark sky. Homer is on the couch. He has been on the couch for 36 years and will be on the couch for as long as the show continues, which may be forever in the sense that forever is always what it has felt like. He is watching television. He is usually watching television. The television is a blue light in the living room window, visible from outside, the flicker of it beating a gentle rhythm against the wall. He has a beer within reach, or the memory of a beer that has been replaced with the idea of a beer that satisfies the same function. He is comfortable in the specific way that Homer Simpson is always eventually comfortable, which is to say totally and completely, as if comfort is his natural state and everything else is the deviation. Marge has gone up to bed. She goes before Homer most nights. She sleeps better when she does not stay up for the second show. She lies awake for a little while, not thinking exactly, processing the day the way the body processes the day when it is given quiet and horizontal space to do it. She is thinking about something she needs to do tomorrow. She is thinking about Bart and whether the thing she heard from a parent at school is something she needs to address directly or whether addressing it directly will make it bigger. She is thinking about Lisa, who seemed quiet today in a way that has two possible readings, and she is not sure which one is right. She falls asleep. Her hair, that impossible tower of blue, spreads across the pillow in a way that the animation has always suggested rather than depicted precisely. The room is dark. The window has the faint orange glow of Springfield's night sky against the glass. Bart is in his room. He is probably supposed to be asleep. He is not asleep. He is lying on his back on his bed looking at the ceiling with the particular kind of wakefulness that 10-year-olds have at this hour. The kind that is part physical energy and part something harder to name, the specific buzz of having a mind that is moving faster than the day can contain. He is thinking about something. Maybe the skateboard trick he wants to try tomorrow. Maybe the thing he said to Milhouse that he is not sure about. Maybe nothing specific, just the general sensation of being awake and alive and 10 years old in a town that always has something happening somewhere. He has a small smile on his face that no one is watching, which means it is probably the most honest expression he makes all day. Lisa finished her book. She finished it an hour ago and has been lying in the half-awake state that follows finishing a very good book, not quite ready to return fully to the non-book world, suspended in the story's atmosphere for as long as the atmosphere holds. The saxophone is in its corner. The books are stacked. She is thinking about the book's ending and whether she agrees with it, and if not, what she would change and whether changing it would make it better or just different. She has opinions. She always has opinions. Even in almost sleep, she has opinions. Maggie is in her crib. Her eyes are open. They are often open when everyone assumes they are closed. She watches the mobile turning above her, the slow rotation of small shapes in the dim light, and she watches whatever is beyond the mobile, whatever is in the room and beyond the room, and she thinks whatever she thinks. The show has never told us what Maggie thinks, which is the show's greatest sustained mystery and possibly its most honest creative decision. What would it mean to know? The value of Maggie's silence is that it holds space for everything she might be thinking, every possibility, every potential. The moment she speaks, the moment she reveals her inner world in language, the space narrows. It becomes specific. The mystery resolves into information. She stays quiet. The mobile turns. Outside, Springfield continues its nighttime operations. The Quickie Mart serves a customer who could not sleep. The fluorescents hum the frequency they have always hummed. The hot dogs have been rotating since before anyone can remember, and will continue rotating until something changes that never changes. Moe's has one light on in the back. The bar is closed, the chairs on the tables, the floor swept in a way that is approximately clean, which is about as clean as Moe's ever achieves. Moe himself is probably still there, in the back room, doing the inventory or whatever he calls the thing he does when the bar is empty and the evening does not quite release him. The phone is quiet. No one is asking for Amanda Hugginkiss tonight. The elementary school is dark. The chalkboard in Bart's classroom still has the residue of today's phrase, the edges of the letters slightly smeared where the eraser did not quite catch. Tomorrow there will be a new sentence. There will always be a new sentence. Bart will write it and the day will happen and he will be here again tomorrow night, 10 years old, thinking at the ceiling. The nuclear plant runs. It always runs. The cooling towers exhale their steam into the air above Springfield, and the steam rises and disperses and becomes part of the sky, which becomes part of the air, which becomes part of the water, which becomes part of everything. The plant is the town's heartbeat. The heartbeat is irregular. but it has been beating for decades and shows no sign of stopping. Mr. Burns is somewhere in his mansion. He has been somewhere in his mansion for a century and more. The weekly treatment was completed on schedule. Smithers saw to it. Smithers sees to everything. Burns is sustained, maintained, held in the peculiar state of extended existence that his wealth and his treatments and his specific relationship with his own biology have produced. He is not sleeping. Burns does not sleep the way other people sleep. He rests. He is very still in the way that things that have existed for a very long time can be very still. He is thinking about something that happened in 1937, or possibly 1947. He is not entirely sure anymore, which bothers him less than it used to. Ned Flanders's house is dark. The lawn is perfect. The welcome mat at the front door says something encouraging. Ned is asleep, genuinely asleep, the clean, deep sleep of a man who has done his best today and knows it and has made his peace with the ways his best was not enough and will try again tomorrow. He prays in his sleep, or something like it. His faith is present even here, in the unconscious, a background condition of his existence. Rod and Todd are asleep on the other side of the wall. The whole town is settling, the way a town settles at night, the architecture relaxing incrementally, the machinery slowing to its minimum, the human noise reducing to the occasional car, and the distant dog and the wind in whatever trees Springfield has managed to maintain along its streets. You have been with Springfield for a long time tonight. You have walked through the plant and the school and the bar. You have sat in Homer's chair and Lisa's room and Bart's treehouse. You have visited the retirement castle where Grandpa tells stories that drift and loop and arrive somewhere unexpected. You have stood outside the Simpson house and looked at the lights in the windows and known who was in each room. You know these people. You have always known them. That is why we come back, all of us who come back, every episode, every year, every decade. Not because the show is perfect. It is not perfect. It has never been perfect. It is the longest-running animated series in American history, partly because it has been willing to be imperfect for 36 years and to keep going anyway, the way the people it depicts keep going, the way all of us keep going, imperfectly and genuinely and without any real choice in the matter. We keep going because the people we love are worth keeping going for. Homer knows this. It is maybe the one thing Homer knows completely, without confusion, without the fog that settles over most of his thinking. He loves his family. He loves them in the wrong ways sometimes, in the insufficient ways, in the ways that require Marge's patience to be a structural element of the household rather than an occasional grace note. He loves them imperfectly. He loves them completely. The two are not in conflict. They have never been in conflict. He is on the couch with the television's blue light on his face, and he is happy, the way he is always eventually happy when the family is upstairs and the house is quiet and the night is doing what nights do. He finishes the last of whatever he was drinking. He puts the can down. He looks at the television. He does not turn it off yet. The light keeps moving. The house keeps breathing. Springfield keeps its impossible shape against the sky, mountains and ocean and desert all nearby, the cooling towers exhaling slowly, the stars above them the same stars they have always been. You are getting very sleepy now. That is good. That is where we have been going all along. Tonight you have visited every strange corner of a town that does not exist, but that belongs to everyone who has ever watched it. You have walked through 36 years of episodes, through the comedy and the grief and the surrealism and the warmth. You have remembered things you forgot you remembered. You have felt things you did not expect to feel about a cartoon family in an imaginary town. That is what Springfield does. That is what it has always done. The loop holds. The family is home. The cooling towers are running. The skateboards are put away for the night. The saxophone is in its corner. Maggie is watching the mobile turn. And somewhere in Springfield, on a couch in a living room with the television providing the only light, Homer Simpson is almost asleep. He does not close his eyes yet. There might be something good on, but sleep is close. It is close for all of us tonight. The clouds above Springfield are the same clouds that have been above Springfield since 1989, the ones the opening sequence descends through every week, the ones that part to reveal the town as if the town is an answer to a question the clouds have been considering. The question is always something like home, and the answer is always Springfield, and the answer is always enough. Let your breathing slow to the pace of the town. Let Springfield's ambient sounds carry you the rest of the way. The Quickie Mart is humming. The Flanders household is dark and peaceful. The plant is running. The family is home. You are asleep. Springfield will be here when you come back. It always is. That is the whole point. If you are still awake, or if you have returned from wherever sleep took you and you want more, let us go back to the beginning and walk through the show's history the slow way. Season by season, episode by episode, at least the ones that matter most. The first season is a different show from what the series became. This is worth sitting with rather than apologizing for. The animation is rougher, more angular. The humor is more grounded, less absurdist. Homer is less himself, more an approximation of the character he was becoming, his voice pitched slightly differently, his personality containing traces of something harder that the show would eventually smooth into the particular Homer the world came to know. But the bones are all there. The family dynamic. The specific way Marge's love for Homer coexists with her exasperation at him, the way her patience is real and not martyrdom, the way she has chosen this man and continues choosing him despite full information about what that choice involves. The specific texture of the Simpson children's relationships with each other and with their parents, the love and the friction, and the rivalry, and the deep loyalty running underneath all of it. The first season's most important contribution was establishing that this family was real. Not realistic, exactly, but emotionally real. They had the shape of actual people in ways that the animation did not always support, but the writing did. The jokes were not always as sharp as they would become. The cultural satire was not as precise, but the emotional authenticity was present from the beginning, which is why people came back. Season 2 found its rhythm. The show discovered what it was and began doing it with increasing confidence. The absurdism found its register. The celebrity cameos began. Michael Jackson. The show's relationship with its own cultural status began in Season 2. The awareness that it had become something that the culture was paying attention to, which the show handled with an irony that was itself part of its cultural significance. The Blinky episode, The Three-Eyed Fish, is Season 2. The first environmental commentary, the first time the show used its cartoon world to say something direct about the real world in a way that was funny and also not entirely a joke. Burns eats the fish on television to prove it is safe. The fish is not safe. The show does not tell you this directly. It does not need to. Season 3 is widely considered the beginning of the show's peak, and looking back through its episode list, it is hard to argue with this assessment. The density of the writing, the layering of comedy and emotional honesty, the willingness to be both funny and genuinely affecting within the same episode, all of these qualities that define the show at its best are present in Season 3 in a form that had clearly found itself. The episode, Flaming Moe's, in which Homer inadvertently invents a cocktail and Moe takes the recipe and turns it into a sensation, is one of the season's great comedies. It is also, underneath the comedy, a story about credit and resentment and the specific pain of watching someone else profit from your idea, which are not small themes, and the show treats them with a lightness that makes them available rather than heavy. The season also contains Homer at the Bat, which brought 9 real Major League Baseball players into Springfield and constructed a remarkably well-crafted comedy around the premise. The joke of each player's individual fate in Springfield is different, ranging from unfortunate to catastrophic, and each one is perfectly tailored to the specific public persona of the player involved, which required either excellent research or excellent instinct, and the show had both. Season 4, the season that, under the Homer coma theory, contains the last episodes of pre-coma Springfield. Whether or not the theory holds, something shifted in Season 4. The show became wilder, the premises got stranger, the celebrity cameos proliferated. Homer went to space in Season 4. The crayon was established as being in Homer's brain in Season 4, in a brief and throwaway moment that a later season would expand into one of the show's most emotionally resonant episodes. The monorail episode is Season 4, The Barbershop Quartet, the episode where Homer meets the gay character in a bowling league, and the show handles it with more grace than most television in 1993 could manage. Season 4 is the season where the show became fully what it was going to be. Season 5, the season that is most frequently cited in surveys and retrospectives as the single best season of the show's entire run. Homer's Barbershop Quartet opens it. Cape Fear, the Sideshow Bob episode, is in Season 5. Homer and Apu, Deep Space Homer, Bart Gets Famous, Homer Loves Flanders, Secrets of a Successful Marriage. The density of classics in Season 5 is statistically improbable. The writers were doing something together that the show has never quite recaptured, Not for lack of trying, but because what they were doing required a specific alignment of talent and timing, and shared understanding of what the show could be at its best. Season 6 has Lisa's wedding, which means it contains the future. It has Bart sells his soul, which is one of the show's most philosophically interesting episodes, a children's cartoon that asks what the soul is, and whether you can live without it, and what it would feel like to get it back. It has Homer's enemy, Frank Grimes, the episode that many read as a commentary on the show itself, on Homer's luck and its relationship to the world's actual fairness, on what happens when you put a character who operates by real-world rules into Springfield. Frank Grimes cannot survive Springfield. Springfield is not designed for people who operate by real-world rules. The rules of Springfield are different, and the gap between those rules and real-world rules is exactly the joke, except it is also exactly the tragedy, and the episode holds both simultaneously with a confidence that is almost uncomfortable. The Golden Age continues through seasons 7 and 8, flickering into seasons 9 and 10 before the transition begins. What the transition was is a subject for its own long conversation. The writing rooms changed. Key writers left. The show continued because the show continues. It found new things to do, and sometimes those things were excellent, and sometimes they were the result of a show that had been running for a very long time, trying to remain itself when the conditions that produced the self were no longer present. The later seasons are not failures. They are something else. They are the show in a different mode, exploring different possibilities, sometimes finding genuine excellence and sometimes finding competence, always finding something, because the show has never stopped trying. And the characters were always there. Homer and Marge and Bart and Lisa and Maggie on the couch, the loop holding, the credits rolling, Springfield ready for next week. Season 23 gave us the episode that briefly seemed to confirm the Homer coma theory and then denied it. Season 34 gave us the couch gag that depicted Homer waking up. The show remains aware of itself in ways that few shows can manage across this kind of duration, aware of its own mythology, its own theories, its own place in the culture. It keeps going. Bart is 10 years old. Lisa is 8. Maggie is 1. Springfield is exactly as you left it. Santa's little helper came from the track. He lost his race on Christmas Eve 1989, and his owner abandoned him at the Springfield Downs dog racing facility, and Homer, standing at that track with nothing to give his family for Christmas, picked up this failing, bony greyhound and brought him home, and the dog has been at 742 Evergreen Terrace ever since. He is not a particularly obedient dog. He has destroyed furniture on multiple occasions. He has eaten things that should not have been eaten. He has escaped the yard with a frequency that suggests the yard's containment abilities are more conceptual than physical. He has chased cats in neighborhoods where this was not appreciated. He has interacted with Bart's various adventures and schemes in ways that are sometimes helpful and frequently complicated. He is also, in the episodes that take him seriously, one of the show's most emotionally resonant characters. Not because he is more complex than the human characters, but because his simplicity is the point. Santa's little helper loves the family with a completeness and an absence of conditions that no human character can quite match. He is happy to see Homer at the same intensity regardless of what Homer has done. He responds to Bart with the same enthusiasm on the days Bart is kind and the days Bart is difficult. He exists in a state of permanent affection that is not performed and not contingent, and that the show has occasionally used to make a point about love that is harder to make through the human characters. There is an episode in which Santa's little helper has puppies, a large litter, and the family cannot keep them all. The process of finding homes for the puppies is the episode's business, and the show handles it with the gentle warmth that animal episodes tend to produce in shows that understand why we love animals. The puppies are small and soft, and the family is attached to each one, and letting them go is small and real in the way that small, real losses are. Snowball is the Simpson family cat, or the Simpson family's succession of cats, since the show has killed several Snowballs across its run, and replaced them each time with a new cat that is assigned the name Snowball to maintain continuity. This is one of the show's running dark jokes about how the show handles continuity, but it is also, if you think about it, a surprisingly honest depiction of how families actually deal with the loss of pets. You mourn. You get another. You give the new one the old name for reasons that are complicated but not dishonest. The love transfers imperfectly but genuinely. The current Snowball looks like Snowball always looked. White, or mostly white, cat-shaped, maintaining the particular dignity that cats maintain regardless of circumstances. Watching from various elevated surfaces with an expression that suggests she has formed opinions about the household but has elected not to share them. Blinky, the three-eyed fish, has already been discussed in the context of the contamination theory, but as an animal, he deserves a moment of his own. He is a goldfish-type fish, small, with 3 eyes arranged on his head in a way that should be alarming, but that Springfield has absorbed as a fact of local aquatic life. He appeared in Season 2. He was caught by Bart. He became national news. Burns ate him on television to prove he was safe, which he was not, and then the news cycle moved on. Blinky is Springfield in miniature. A living marker of damage done. A thing that should have prompted a reckoning and instead prompted a news cycle and then silence. He swam through those contaminated waters for long enough to develop a third eye, and the town looked at him and said, "Well, that is unusual," and then went back to drinking the water. He is out there still, presumably, somewhere in the rivers and ponds of Springfield. 3 eyes open, swimming. The Alaskan bullworm that Bart discovers is one of the show's most beloved wildlife-adjacent plots. The worm is enormous. It is underground. It is eating Springfield's foundations. The plan to deal with it involves Salt Lake City in ways that the episode does not explain and does not need to explain, because the absurdist logic of the plot is not the point. The point is Bart, as amateur naturalist, genuinely delighted by the existence of something monstrous and interesting, the quality of wonder that is one of his underappreciated traits. He is not afraid of the worm. He thinks it is great. He would keep it as a pet if he could. The worm is enormous and terrifying, and Bart sees it and says, "What a thing to exist in the world." The snake that Bart adopts briefly, the various exotic animals that Burns has kept over the years, the horse that Homer becomes involved with in a racing storyline, the dolphin uprising episode where Springfield's dolphins, long oppressed by the town's landlocked relationship to the sea, organize a movement to reclaim what was once theirs. These are all part of the show's extended meditation on the relationship between Springfield's human population and the natural world that surrounds it. The natural world in Springfield has a quality that mirrors the human world. The fish have extra eyes. The birds occasionally do things that birds should not be able to do. The wildlife near the nuclear plant has been affected in ways that the show has never fully cataloged. But the animals are present. They are part of the ecosystem. They watch from the edges of the human stories with the patience that animals have always had in the presence of human drama, which is infinite and slightly contemptuous. Santa's little helper is asleep now. He sleeps in the living room, curled into the specific pretzel shape that greyhounds achieve when sleeping, which looks impossible and apparently is entirely comfortable. His tail occasionally moves, responding to something in the dream, a remembered run or a remembered smell or the memory of the track. The night Homer picked him up, the car ride home, the moment the door opened and the house smelled like a family, and he understood, the way dogs understand these things before the words are available, that this was going to be his place. He is dreaming of it now, probably. The tail moves. The quick E-Mart squishy? This is where we should begin if we are going to talk about the food of Springfield. Because the squishy is Springfield's most consistent and most beloved food product, the drink that has been available in every flavor imaginable, and several that were not imaginable until they were introduced. A squishy is a semi-frozen beverage dispensed from a machine in the corner of the quick E-Mart. It comes in colors that do not appear in the natural world. Crusty Berry Lemon is a canonical flavor. Diabetic Coma is the size designation for the largest available cup. The squishy has been consumed by every character in the show at some point, has been involved in several plots, has caused mild neurological effects in at least one episode, and has been present as background detail in the Quickie Mart for 36 years. It is, in a way, the most reliable thing in Springfield. The squishy machine is always on. The squishy is always available. The colors may change, the flavors may rotate, but there will be a frozen beverage in a loud artificial color waiting for you at the Quick E-Mart whenever you need one. The hot dogs on the roller grill are a different kind of Springfield food. They have been rotating for so long that their origin is unclear. Apu knows how long they have been rotating, probably, but this is not information he has ever been asked to volunteer, and it is probably better that he has not. The hot dogs serve a function. They are there when you need them. They are warm, in the thermal sense, which is the minimum requirement for a hot dog. They are food in the approximate sense that satisfies the legal definition. Springfield has chosen not to ask more of them than this. The donut. We have discussed Homer's relationship with the donut, but the donut as a food object in Springfield deserves its own attention. Donuts appear at the power plant, at police stations, at meetings, at events, at celebrations, at quiet moments of private comfort. They are Springfield's communion bread, the food that appears in every context and means slightly different things, depending on the context, but always means something like, "This is a moment, and we are acknowledging it with a round fried dough with colored frosting on top." Homer's specific preferred donut is pink frosted with sprinkles. This is established and maintained. It appears in his dreams. It appears in his visions. It is on the show's promotional materials. It is possibly the most famous donut in fiction. The Lard Lad statue in Springfield holds a giant pink frosted donut on a stick, a monument to appetite and to the specific kind of joy that appetite can produce. The donut is a circle with a hole in the middle, which a certain kind of thinker might use as a starting point for something. Homer has, in fact, used it as a starting point for something. His theory about the shape of the universe, which turned out to be at least not entirely wrong according to the show's internal cosmological logic, began with the observation that a donut is shaped a certain way, and the universe might be too. Homer's mind is not capable of sustaining this observation into a rigorous scientific framework. But the observation itself is, strangely, not wrong. Moe's Tavern serves a house cocktail called the Flaming Moe, which was invented by Homer under the name Flaming Homer, before Moe appropriated the recipe. The drink is made with a combination of ingredients that includes a children's cough syrup and is set on fire before consumption. It should be disgusting. It is apparently extraordinary. The scene in which Homer first tastes it and his eyes go wide, with the specific look of someone encountering something they did not know existed, but that they will spend the rest of their life looking for, again is one of the show's great food moments. Springfield's restaurants have always been part of the show's extended commentary on food culture and the American relationship with eating. The Gilded Truffle is Springfield's fancy restaurant, where the entrees are small and expensive and the sommelier has opinions. It appears when the show needs to make a point about the aspirational register of fine dining and the gap between what the food looks like and what it tastes like and what you actually want when you are hungry, which is probably not what they are serving. The Krusty Burger is the fast food institution of Springfield, franchised from Krusty's Empire and operating with the specific commitment to minimal food standards that characterizes the category. The Ribwich was a limited-time sandwich offering that became a cultural phenomenon within the show, a deeply unclear meat product that produced a devoted following willing to travel long distances to obtain it. The following mirrors with perfect precision the way food items sometimes produce irrational devotion in the real world, The Simpsons once again finding the joke that is also the observation. Chef Luigi's Italian restaurant is one of Springfield's background institutions. Luigi is an Italian stereotype that the show has always deployed, with the awareness that it is deploying a stereotype, the irony doing some of the heavy lifting required when you are making a joke that relies on a type. He serves pasta. He does it with passion. The pasta is probably not what you would get in Italy, but it is what Springfield has, and Springfield has made its peace with this. The Simpsons family kitchen is its own territory. Marge cooks. She cooks consistently and well by the standards of the domestic American kitchen that she represents. Her meals are the warm center of the household's routine. The thing that happens at the kitchen table every evening where the family gathers and argues and catches up and occasionally has the kind of conversation that becomes the episode's emotional core. Her pancakes are legendary within the show. Her roast is mentioned with reverence. Her bouillabaisse appeared in an episode that used it to trace the spread of a food memory across multiple generations of Simpsons, each one encountering the dish in a different context, the recipe itself becoming a carrier of family history in ways that the show treats with surprising depth. Homer eats Marge's cooking with the specific pleasure of a man who has never entirely trusted good luck and therefore experiences every good meal with a gratitude that borders on religious. He knows that what he has is good. He knows this about Marge's cooking the same way he knows it about Marge herself, imperfectly and incompletely but genuinely. Let the kitchen be warm tonight. Let the smell of something cooking find its way into whatever half-conscious state you are in. Marge's kitchen, the round table, the sounds of a family in the next room. Dinner is ready whenever you want it. Music lives in Springfield in ways that go beyond the show's theme and its incidental score. Lisa's saxophone is the first and most essential thing, and we have already spent time with it, but there is a quality to the way the show uses her music that deserves sustained attention. When Lisa plays, the camera slows down. Not always, but often. The visual rhythm of the show adjusts to the music, takes its pace from whatever she is playing, lets the scene breathe differently than it would if the scene were built around dialogue or action. She plays blues sometimes. Real blues, not a children's approximation of blues. The sadness in it is genuine, not performed, and the show has never been afraid to let an 8-year-old character play something genuinely mournful, because the music is part of who Lisa is, and who Lisa is includes genuinely mournful as one of her registers. The episode in which Lisa encounters a jazz musician named Bleeding Gums Murphy, and they have a conversation through music, their two saxophones finding a shared vocabulary, is one of the show's most quietly beautiful things. Murphy is not a major character. He appears briefly, he makes an impression, he dies, and Lisa grieves him with a real grief. The music they made together was real for the episode it existed in, and it stays real in the memory. The Simpsons has featured real music throughout its run, in ways that the show's longevity has transformed into a kind of archive. Songs that were current when the show aired them are now historical artifacts embedded in Springfield's fabric. Hearing them in context, the specific cultural moment they represented, and then hearing them again years later, Springfield becomes a time capsule of American popular music across 3.5 decades. The music teachers at Springfield Elementary have been various and mostly ineffective, partly because the school's music program is chronically underfunded, and partly because the student population of Springfield has a relationship with sustained practice that is complicated by everything else Springfield has going on. But Lisa has always transcended the classroom. She does not need the school to play. She needs the saxophone and the quiet and the feeling she gets when she closes her eyes and finds the note. Barney Gumble, Homer's frequently intoxicated best friend who maintains a secondary life as a regular at Moe's, has a beautiful singing voice. This is revealed at some point and treated as the show treats all such revelations about characters whose primary function has seemed simpler, which is to say with delight at the gap between the apparent and the actual. Barney, who is mostly present in the show as a figure of comic despair, can sing in a way that transforms a room. He sings at Moe's sometimes, if the night is right. The regulars listen. The bar goes quiet in the way bars go quiet when something true is happening in them. And then it ends and everyone goes back to their drinks, and the evening continues. Homer in the Barbershop Quartet had a voice that surprised everyone, including Homer. He found himself suddenly part of something that worked, a 4-part harmony that achieved something none of the 4 voices could manage alone. The B-Sharps had a Grammy. They had a moment. The moment passed. But the music was real while it lasted. The show has done full musical episodes. Songs that continue the story, numbers that carry emotional weight, moments where the medium's natural tendency toward music is honored rather than suppressed. Not often because the show is not primarily a musical, but when it does, it commits fully. There is a lullaby quality to Springfield at this hour. The hum of the plant, the distant sound of a saxophone from a window left open, the refrigerator in the quick E-Mart, the particular quality of silence that a sleeping town produces, which is not really silence but a very low and comfortable kind of noise. Let the music find you wherever you are. Lisa is playing something slow in her room, working through a feeling she has not quite named yet, the notes asking the questions that words cannot form precisely. The music drifts out the window and down the street and finds its way to wherever you are listening. It is for you tonight. Every slow, sad, beautiful note of it. The show changed. Around seasons 9 and 10, something shifted in how the show felt. This has been analyzed extensively by critics and fans, debated on forums that predate social media, and continued on social media when it arrived, and the consensus has landed at a vague but fairly stable assessment. The early seasons were one kind of show. The later seasons are a different kind. The transition was gradual and then felt sudden, which is how most transitions feel. What the later seasons lost is often more discussed than what they found. The density of the early seasons' comedy, the specific quality of the writing room that produced it, the particular combination of people who were all doing the same thing with the same understanding of what the best version of it looked like. That combination did not hold indefinitely. It could not. People move on. Conditions change. What a show can be at a specific moment of its history cannot be reproduced simply by continuing to produce the show. What the later seasons found, and this is less often discussed, is a different relationship with their own history. They became a show with a mythology, with 35 years of episodes to reference, to revisit, to draw threads from. The later seasons could do things the early seasons could not do. which is to place current stories in conversation with the whole of what came before them. A character can be given a moment in Season 30 that resonates differently because of what happened to them in Season 4. A relationship can be explored from an angle that only becomes available after decades of accumulated history. Some later seasons have done this beautifully. Some have done it perfunctorily. The variation in quality that the later seasons produce is itself a kind of truth about what it means to be a show running for this long. You cannot be brilliant for 36 years. You cannot maintain peak creative form across 800 episodes. What you can be is present, consistent, still trying. The Simpsons has always been still trying. There is a later season episode in which Homer and Marge address directly the question of whether their marriage still works. Not through comedy, not through adventure, but through conversation. The episode sits with the question. It does not resolve it neatly. It ends somewhere honest, which is that the answer is yes, but the yes requires ongoing work, an ongoing choice, an ongoing willingness to see each other clearly and still choose to stay. This is a different show from the one that did Homer's barbershop quartet. It is a different kind of honesty. Both are honesty. The show contains both. There is a later season that gave us an episode structured around Maggie, just Maggie, without the rest of the family except as context. Maggie in situations that allow the show to explore what she is capable of when she is the story's primary agent. The episode is quiet and clever, and does what the best Maggie episodes have always done, which is remind you that the silent character watching from the crib has been watching everything. The celebrity cameos in later seasons became less organic and more architectural, guest stars as promotional relationships, names in the credits that are meant to generate interest before the episode airs. This is not wrong. It is just different from the early season's guest appearances, which felt more like genuine creative meetings. Both can produce good television. The question is whether the creative meeting happened or whether the logistics of scheduling a famous person became the point. Sometimes the later season celebrity appearances have been extraordinary. Sometimes they have been background. The show continues both traditions. Later seasons gave us the episodes set in the future that the show began producing more regularly, glimpses of where the family would end up if time were allowed to move. These episodes are occasionally heartbreaking. Bart, as an adult, still Bart-shaped but carrying the weight of 40 years of choices, standing in rooms that are different from the room he is in now, looking out windows at versions of Springfield that have changed while also remaining entirely themselves. Lisa at 40, brilliant and still looking, still asking questions that the world has still not quite answered, still playing the saxophone, which is both sad and beautiful. Sad because she is still in the same relationship with music that she had when she was 8, and beautiful for exactly the same reason. Homer and Marge old together. The show has imagined this several times. The things that change and the things that do not. They are still on the couch. They are still each other's person, imperfectly and completely. The flash-forwards are the show's way of acknowledging what it will not give you in the present. The characters will not age, the loop will not close. But somewhere, in the space the show opens when it imagines the future, the family grows up. Homer and Marge grow old. The kids move through their lives. And the show watches this from a distance, tenderly, the way you watch something that you love knowing it will change, and wanting to see what it becomes, and not being able to stop time anyway. The later seasons are worth watching. Not all of them. Some of them. The ones that find something. The ones that still care. The ones that know they are sitting inside 30 years of history and treat that history as a resource rather than a weight. Springfield keeps going. The loop keeps floating. The family is on the couch. Outside, the cooling towers exhale into the night. The show is not over. It may never be over. And honestly, you have always been fine with that. Sleep now. Springfield will be here. It is 3 a.m. in Springfield. The town is as quiet as Springfield gets at 3 a.m, which is quieter than you might expect given everything. The Quickie Mart has locked its door and left the lights on, as it always does. The plant runs its nighttime minimum. The retirement castle has the specific silence of many people sleeping in the same building, the collective breath of it. Ned Flanders has left his porch light on, which he always does, because he believes in being visible to anyone who might be passing and might need to know that someone is here. 742 Evergreen Terrace is dark, except for the television. Homer fell asleep on the couch around 11:30. The television has been on since then, cycling through its late-night programming, infomercials, and old movies, and nothing in particular. The blue light is steady now, the rhythm of the screen no longer registering on Homer's face because Homer is deeply, completely asleep. He is snoring. The snore is the specific Homer snore that Marge knows well enough to sleep through from upstairs, a sound that is both affectionate and extremely consistent. The dog has relocated from the floor to the end of the couch near Homer's feet, which is technically against the rules and is not being enforced tonight. Upstairs, Marge is dreaming. The dream is private. The curtains move faintly near the open window, the night air from Springfield finding its way in, carrying whatever the night air in Springfield carries, which we will not examine too closely but which tonight feels clean and warm and right. Bart is not asleep yet. He almost is. He is in that state where thoughts stop being thoughts and start being images. The transition point where intention becomes irrelevant and the mind starts generating rather than reasoning. He had an idea for tomorrow. The idea is already fading into the softer territory of almost sleep. It will be gone by morning, or it will come back. Bart's ideas have a way of coming back. Lisa is asleep. She has been asleep since earlier, exhausted by the day's reading and the week's caring about things. The journal is closed on her nightstand. The saxophone is in its corner. Her breathing is regular and slow. Maggie watches the mobile. The mobile turns. The pacifier makes the small, comfortable sound it always makes. You have been in Springfield for several hours now. You have walked every street. You have visited every character. You have remembered every episode that needed remembering and let the ones you had forgotten stay forgotten, because some things are better when they surface on their own rather than being retrieved directly. The show has been on television since 1989. By the time this script exists, in whatever year you are listening to it, a staggering amount of time has passed since Homer Simpson first appeared on screen. More years than most of the people reading or listening have been alive. More years than any other animated show in American television history. And still, 742 Evergreen Terrace. The orange couch. The family home from wherever they were. The same sequence playing, the clouds parting, the town assembling below. Still Springfield, still these people, still the loop, floating and permanent, and somehow both entirely predictable and endlessly interesting. Why is that? Why does it keep working? Why does the sight of the couch, the sound of the theme, the flash of Bart writing on the chalkboard still produce in so many people the specific combination of happy and home and here? Maybe because those people watched it when they were children, in the specific state of open absorption that children bring to the things they love, and the show became part of how they understood the world. Maybe because it appeared at exactly the right cultural moment, when American families needed a mirror that told the truth about them with enough affection to make the truth bearable. Maybe because the writing was just very good for a sustained long period in ways that imprinted themselves permanently on the memories of the people who encountered it. Or maybe, as the show itself sometimes suggests, it is simpler than any of that. Maybe we love Springfield because Springfield loves us back. The show has always known we were watching. It has always addressed itself to us from inside. From behind the fourth wall, it has been breaking and rebuilding for 36 years. The couch gags are for us. The callbacks are for us. The moments of genuine emotion embedded in the comedy are for us, placed there by writers who knew that the audience watching a cartoon family had their own families, their own orange couches, their own imperfect love for the imperfect people they chose. The Simpsons sees us in the way that good art sees you, in the way that something made with real care and real attention to the human experience of being alive recognizes something in you that you recognize in return. It sees Homer trying. It sees Marge holding things together. It sees Bart performing invulnerability over the real vulnerability of being 10 years old in a confusing world. It sees Lisa pouring her grief into the saxophone at 11 at night with the window open because the music is the only form that can hold what she has to say. It sees Maggie watching everything, understanding everything, biding her time. And it sees you, watching them, from whatever couch you are on right now, in whatever city, at whatever hour it happens to be. The clouds part, the town assembles, the family comes home, the couch holds everyone, the television is blue in the dark and the snoring is consistent, and the mobile is turning and the saxophone is in the corner, and everything that should be here is here, and everything is, for this moment, enough. You are asleep now, or close enough. Springfield will be here when you open your eyes. It always is. That is the whole point. It has always been the whole point. Homer Simpson has been alive for a very long time, without aging a single year, and in all that time he has packed more lives into one continuous existence than most people could manage across several reincarnations. Let us slow down and really spend some time with the full range of what he has done and been, because the catalog of Homer's experiences deserves more than a list. It deserves the same kind of patient attention that Homer himself almost never applies to anything, which means we are going to do something Homer would never do, which is sit quietly with his life and really look at it. Homer Simpson's first love is the family. We have established this. But his second love, or perhaps his simultaneous love, existing alongside the family with equal intensity, though not always equal wisdom, is food. Not cooking, exactly, though he has cooked, and the results have occasionally been remarkable. Food as an act of reception, as the thing that happens to Homer, not the thing Homer does. He opens his mouth and the world enters him, and he is grateful, completely, without reservation, every single time. The chocolate that Homer discovers in one episode is not just chocolate, it is a revelation. The show builds an entire subplot around Homer's response to a single piece of high-quality chocolate, and the subplot works because Dan Castellaneta voices Homer's response with a quality that is half comedy and half genuine ecstasy, something that suggests Homer's relationship with pleasure is simpler and purer than anything the rest of us manage. He does not qualify it. He does not worry about what it means. He just experiences the chocolate completely. This is Homer's gift. He has always had this gift, the capacity for total, unqualified experience of whatever he is experiencing. He does not half feel things. He falls into feelings like falling into water, completely submerged, and he comes out the other side wet and unconcerned and ready for the next thing. The jobs, we mentioned the jobs. Let us really go through them. He was a monorail conductor, which we discussed. The episode is called Marge vs. the Monorail, and it is a perfect comedy that uses the premise of a corrupt infrastructure salesman to make observations about how communities make decisions, how enthusiasm and salesmanship can substitute for planning and due diligence, how the desire to believe something exciting is happening can overwhelm the quieter, more cautious voice that says maybe we should read the contract more carefully. Homer becomes the conductor because no one else wants the job, and because the word conductor has a grandeur to it that Homer finds appealing. He sits in the driver's seat of a runaway monorail and resolves the crisis through a combination of improvisation and the specific quality he has of not quite understanding how bad things are. He was a food critic, and we mentioned this. The episode in which he is a food critic is one of the show's best examinations of the gap between genuine taste and professional taste, between eating with your whole self and eating with your critical apparatus engaged. Homer eats with his whole self. Always. The critical apparatus does not really kick in. A bad meal at a restaurant that treats him well receives a glowing review. A sublime meal at a restaurant that ignores him receives something more equivocal. His criticism is a direct readout of his emotional experience, which is not what criticism is supposed to be, but which is also, the show quietly suggests, more honest than most criticism is willing to be about what it actually is. He was a safety inspector, which is his ongoing profession. We keep returning to this. It deserves to be returned to. The safety inspector job is Homer's anchor in a way that none of the other jobs are, not because it suits him, which it does not in any measurable way, but because it is the thing he comes back to after every adventure. He goes to space and comes back. He joins the mob and comes back. He becomes a food critic and comes back. The plant is always there. Sector 7G is always there. The donut is always in the drawer. There is something reassuring about this that even Homer seems to feel. Whatever happens out in the world, wherever the week's adventure takes him, the plant is the fixed point. Burns will be in his office. Smithers will be managing something. Lenny and Carl will be at their stations. The control room will have its familiar hum. Homer will sit in his chair, and the chair will fit him the way things fit you when you have been in them long enough. He was a snowplow operator, which gave him the name Mr. Plow, which gave him a jingle, which gave him a moment of genuine small business success, before Barney undercut him with a competing business called the Plow King, and the friendship was temporarily damaged in ways that a snowstorm eventually repaired. The Mr. Plow episode is a comedy. It is also a tiny business parable about the difficulty of maintaining friendships when economic interests create friction, and about the way a crisis can resolve what ordinary circumstances cannot. He was a bodyguard for a mayor and, briefly, for other figures of local prominence. He was a snowplow operator, and a country music manager, and a traveling carnival worker, briefly, in one of the episodes that deposits him in a very specific corner of American working-class life, and finds genuine comedy and genuine texture there. He was a teacher, once, in Springfield Elementary. The episode is constructed around the question of what Homer would do if given access to children in an educational context, and the answer is roughly what you would expect, if what you would expect is that he would accidentally be excellent, for exactly the reasons that the standard educational approach is bad. He connects with the students because he talks to them honestly, as people whose questions deserve real answers rather than managed answers. He does not manage them, he just responds to them. The results are briefly extraordinary, and then complicated by Homer's specific limitations in ways that resolve the episode on terms that are honest about what Homer is and what he is not. He was a union organizer, briefly, in the episode that depicts his attempt to get the plant workers dental coverage. The episode is sympathetic to the labor perspective without being naively so, understanding that the specific conditions of Homer's workplace make the power imbalance real and the workers' grievances legitimate, and also understanding that Homer as a union organizer is a comedy premise that the show is obligated to honor. He negotiates. Burns deploys countermeasures. Homer persists in the specific way he persists in everything, which is by not quite understanding when he should give up. He won dental. The dental was limited, but he won it. He was a professional daredevil. He jumped things. He fell off things that he was supposed to have jumped but had not quite judged the distance correctly. Springfield watched. Springfield is always watching when Homer is about to do something that has a reasonable chance of injuring him badly. There is a civic enthusiasm for this that the show depicts honestly, the specific pleasure that Springfield takes in the spectacle of someone else's near destruction, which is not a kind pleasure but is a consistent one. He was in a barbershop quartet and we discussed this. The Grammy exists somewhere in the house. The trophy is probably in a box in the garage that has not been opened since 1985, or whenever the timeline places the B-Sharp's moment of glory. The Grammy is in a box, and the box is in the garage, and the garage has things in it that have not been assessed since the garage became a repository for the things that no longer fit in the house. He won the Grammy. He has always had the Grammy. He just does not think about it very often. He was involved in organized crime. Fat Tony recruited him, briefly, in ways that the episode treats with the light touch that The Simpsons brings to organized crime, which is fundamentally comedic, the mob as another job sector in Springfield's employment landscape rather than a genuinely dark institution. Homer is not a natural criminal. He does the things he is asked to do without quite understanding why he is being asked to do them, which is approximately how he approaches every job, and the results in the criminal context are predictably chaotic. He ended up leaving organized crime the way he leaves most things, through a combination of circumstances that were not entirely within his control, and a return to the status quo that everyone involved seemed to find satisfactory enough. He was a beer baron, which is one of the show's more specifically American premises, drawing on the tradition of bootlegging to construct an episode about Springfield's periodic shortages of goods that the town considers essential. Beer was restricted in Springfield in this episode. Homer produced beer in his basement. Springfield celebrated him. Then things got more complicated, as things in Springfield always do. He was a vigilante crime fighter, the Crimson Mender, which we have discussed. The costume was handmade. The methods were unconventional. The effectiveness was moderate. He hung up the costume and returned to civilian life when the circumstances that had motivated him resolved themselves. He was, for a brief period, the leader of a cult, though the show does not call it a cult. The show calls it a family and shows you that it is a cult in ways that the characters inside it do not have the perspective to notice. Homer's charisma, such as it is real enough to gather followers in a moment of specifically Springfield-shaped vulnerability, and the followers follow until the episode finds its way back to the standard configuration. He worked at a bowling alley, owned one briefly, lost it. He worked at a stadium. He worked in a submarine. He drove a truck. He worked in a sugar factory that he did not quite fully understand, but that provided employment for most of an episode. He was a stay-at-home parent for a period when Marge had her professional moment, which revealed that Homer is a surprisingly adequate stay-at-home parent once you calibrate your expectations correctly, by which I mean significantly downward, after which the domestic management he provides is roughly adequate and occasionally warm. He invented things, the auto dialer, the makeup shotgun, various other devices that solve problems no one had previously understood to be problems and that create different problems in the process of solving them. Homer's inventions are deeply Homerian, which means they are both genuinely clever in their way and completely impractical in their application, solutions to problems that are themselves new problems in disguise. He played professional golf. He was good at it, briefly, before the fame and the lifestyle that professional success brought made him worse at it. The arc is a compressed version of a story that many successful athletes have lived in more extended form. The talent uncomplicated by ambition, suddenly complicated by ambition, and by the specific pressures that come with being paid to do something you used to do for its own sake. Homer's golf episode is one of the show's small meditations on what success does to the thing that earned it. He was involved in elections. He volunteered for campaigns. He worked as a campaign manager, briefly. He ran for office himself in at least one episode, with the result that you would expect from a campaign managed by Homer's principles, which are genuine but not especially sophisticated and not especially compatible with the political environment they were operating in. He sang, "We discussed this. The voice is real. The gift is real." Homer singing, in any context, carries the specific emotional honesty that characterizes everything Homer does when he is being real rather than performing. He is almost always being real, which is both his greatest vulnerability and his most endearing quality. All of these lives, all of these jobs and adventures and schemes and misadventures, and at the end of every one, the plant is still there, the chair is still waiting, the donut is still in the drawer. Homer goes back to his post. He sits down. The warning lights cycle. He is home. Marge Simpson has spent 36 years being the responsible one, and the show has spent 36 years examining what that costs, while also never quite making the cost too visible, because Marge does not make it visible, and Marge's choices are her own. Her full name is Marjorie Jacqueline Bouvier Simpson. She has blue hair that towers above her in a vertical formation that defies gravity and that she has maintained in the exact same shape for as long as the show has been on television. She drives a station wagon. She wears a green dress in most contexts. She worries about things. The worrying is the defining activity of Marge's daily existence, not in the neurotic sense but in the loving sense. She worries because she cares, because the people she loves are real to her and their well-being is a matter of active concern rather than passive hope. She monitors. She anticipates. She sees things coming before they arrive and positions herself to address them, which requires a level of attention to other people's states and needs that most of the people around her do not notice or appreciate or sometimes even register. Homer does not notice. Not because he does not love her, because Homer does not have the attentional machinery to track what Marge does behind the scenes of their household. He benefits from it entirely. He is often the direct recipient of Marge's preventive care, the crisis she averted before it reached him, the problem she solved before it became his problem. He just never knows it happened. The show has been honest about this dynamic for 36 years without being punishing about it. Marge chose Homer. She keeps choosing Homer. Not because she is without alternatives, because the show has been careful over the years to establish that Marge has the capacity to attract and be attracted to other people. She chooses Homer because Homer is Homer, because what they have is real, because she saw something in him when they were young and she has kept seeing it even on the days it is hard to find. The episode in which Marge considers an affair with her tennis instructor is one of the show's most careful treatments of this dynamic. The attraction is real. The instructor is attentive in ways Homer is not. He notices her. He talks to her. He asks about her life and listens to the answers in a way that Homer, on a normal day, does not quite have the equipment to manage. Marge feels what she feels, and the show does not tell her she should not feel it, but she does not act on it. She comes home. The homecoming is not resignation, it is choice, and the show makes sure you know the difference. Marge has had careers. She was a real estate agent for a while. She was briefly an officer with the Springfield Police. She was an entrepreneur. She has a talent for art that the show revealed in an episode where she painted a portrait of Mr. Burns and discovered she was genuinely capable. She is capable of many things. The domestic context of her life does not constrain her capability. It constrains her application of it in ways that the show has examined from several angles without quite resolving. She is, on the evidence of the show's entire run, the most consistently competent adult in Springfield. Not the most intelligent. Lisa has her there. Not the most successful, because Burns has everyone on raw material resources, but competent in the broad sense, in the sense of being functional and effective and capable of managing the reality of her life without constant external support. Homer has constant external support. The support is Marge. The show does not frame this as exploitation. It frames it as love. Marge loves Homer in full knowledge of what he is and is not, and the love does not depend on him being different, on him fixing the things that need fixing about himself, on him finally becoming the version of himself she always knew he could be. She loves the version of himself he actually is. That is harder than it sounds. Most love carries within it some hope of transformation, some expectation that the person will become, over time, a better version of themselves. Marge's love for Homer is unusual in the show's depiction because it has accepted him, not given up on him, not lowered her expectations, but genuinely accepted that this is the man, this is what he is, and the love is for this rather than for the potential. She gets angry. The show is honest about that too. There are episodes where Marge's patience runs out, where the accumulated weight of Homer's disasters tips over into something she cannot absorb quietly, where she says things that she has been carrying for a long time and that come out harder than she intended, but not harder than they are true. After these moments, they repair. The repair is always real. The show has never used one of these moments as a pivot to something dark and irreversible. Homer and Marge argue and they come back to each other, which is also how it works in lives that are functioning. The ones where the love is real and the repair is real and the return is genuine rather than strategic. Marge has hobbies that the show visits occasionally and then sets aside, which mirrors how hobbies work in the lives of people who have families and jobs and limited time. She painted. She bowled. She had a gambling addiction, briefly and memorably, in one of the show's best depictions of how compulsive behavior arrives. Not because the person is weak, but because the specific combination of circumstances and temperament and moment created a vulnerability that the gambling filled with something it had been looking for. The gambling episode is one of the show's most honest episodes about how easily good people can develop bad habits. Marge is not a weak person. She is not a person with a history of compulsive behavior. She just found herself in the casino at the right moment and the wrong one, and the slot machines gave her something that she had been quietly missing, a context in which she was the only relevant variable, where no one needed her and no one was watching, and the outcome was entirely her own. She got help. She went to the support group. She addressed it. But the episode does not treat her recovery as simple. It treats it as the beginning of ongoing management, which is more honest about how these things work than most television is willing to be. Her relationship with her mother is another of the show's persistent threads. Jacqueline Bouvier, Marge's mother, has the specific quality of a parent who is loving but also, in specific ways, a source of the anxieties that Marge has been managing her whole life. She has opinions about Homer. She has always had opinions about Homer. The opinions have been expressed with varying levels of directness over the years, and Marge has navigated them with the specific skill of someone who loves both parties to a conflict and must manage both while managing neither in ways that feel like choosing sides. Her sisters, Patty and Selma, are their own extended episode premise. They do not like Homer. They have never liked Homer. Their dislike is consistent, specific, and not entirely without basis. They are present in the family's life in a way that is both supportive and complicated, bringing their full personality to every family event, which means bringing their full opinions, their full judgment, their full capacity for pointed observation at Homer's expense. Marge manages them the way she manages everything, with patience, with love, with the specific grace of someone who knows that the imperfect people around her are worth the ongoing effort. She is the center. She has always been the center. Not the most dramatic, not the most quotable, not the character who generates the biggest plots, but the character without whom none of the other characters could function in the ways they function, the person whose constancy makes everyone else's inconstancy bearable. She goes to bed before Homer. She lies in the dark and processes the day. She falls asleep thinking about something she needs to do tomorrow. In the morning, she will make pancakes. The family will come down and find them already there. Homer will eat 3 before sitting down properly. Everything will be exactly as it should be. Barney Gumble has been Homer's best friend since childhood. This is established early in the show and maintained through decades of episodes, through all the moments when it might have been easier narratively to simply let the friendship fade into background, because the show understood from the beginning that Homer and Barney's friendship was saying something specific about how friendships work when one person changes and the other does not or cannot. Barney's full name is Barnard Arnold Gumble. He attended Springfield High School with Homer. There is a flashback, one of the show's most devastating little reveals, in which a young Barney appears before he became the Barney who stands at the bar every evening. Young Barney is clear-eyed, intelligent, with actual plans. He had a future that existed in his mind as a specific shape. He was going to do something. The something is not specified because the specifics are not the point. Homer offered him a beer. Barney drank the beer. The rest is Springfield history. This origin story is played for a laugh in the episode that contains it, but it sits in the memory as something else, something that asks what we owe each other in moments of casual influence, what responsibility we carry for the consequences of small gestures made without the understanding that they are anything other than small. Homer did not know what he was doing when he handed Barney that beer. He was not malicious. He was a teenager offering his friend a drink at a party, which is a thing that teenagers do, and in the vast majority of cases, the drink is drunk and forgotten, and no particular trajectory is changed. But in Barney's case, something in that first beer aligned with something already present in his biochemistry, or his psychology, or his specific vulnerability. And the drink became the first of many, and the many became the pattern of his life. The adult Barney at Moe's is not a depressing figure the way he might be if the show were making a different kind of point. He is funny, first. He has the specific humor of a man who has made peace with himself in ways that cannot be entirely reversed, and who has found within that peace a genuine personality. His burps are famous. They are long and resonant, and produced with a timing that suggests they are not entirely involuntary, that Barney has some command over the burp as a comedic instrument and exercises that command. He loves Homer. The friendship is real. It is maintained through decades of bar stools and football games, and the specific companionship of two people who have been in each other's lives since before they knew who they were going to become. There is an episode in which Barney gets sober. He achieves sobriety, and the sobriety is real. He is clear-eyed again. He makes films. He directs a short film about his own recovery that is quite good, sufficiently good that it wins a festival prize. He is, in sobriety, exactly the person that his young self suggested he would be. Intelligent, capable, with the specific creative sensibility that his years at the bar have given him without destroying. He starts drinking again. The episode shows you why, in a way that is both specific to Barney and broadly true about recovery, the way a single moment can undo a long period of maintenance, not because the person is weak but because the circumstances were wrong and the body had not forgotten what it wanted even when the mind had. The show does not judge him for it. The show depicts it and keeps Barney at the bar, and keeps Homer on the stool next to him, and keeps the friendship intact. There is a version of Barney Gumble who went to college and had a career and lived out the specific future his young self could see. That version exists somewhere in the possibility space of what he could have been. But in Springfield, on the stool at Moe's, this version is also complete, not a failed version of the other, just the one that happened. Homer and Barney talk about nothing, mostly. The talk is the point, the presence, the showing up at the bar and being next to each other and letting the evening pass. That is also love, a different form of it, quiet and consistent and requiring nothing that the other person cannot give. Springfield Elementary contains approximately 20 students at any given time, from the perspective of the main cast, and somewhere north of 1,000 from the perspective of the episodes that deal with the school as an institution. The student population shifts. Children appear and disappear. Recurring students cycle in and out of the foreground depending on which character the episode requires. The most consistent children beyond the Simpsons are Milhouse Van Houten, Nelson Muntz, Martin Prince, and the unspecified girl known as Sherry or Terry, who exist as twins, or possibly as the same character at double intensity. Milhouse is Bart's best friend. His full name is Milhouse Mussolini Van Houten. His middle name comes from a grandfather who was enthusiastic about a particular period of Italian history in ways that seemed reasonable at the time and look very different in retrospect. Milhouse is the child that Springfield has been least gentle with, the one who seems to receive most of the collateral damage from Bart's schemes and from the general ambient unkindness of the environment. His asthma, his glasses, his desperate, sincere love for Lisa, which Lisa has always been aware of, and has always handled with more kindness than it might receive from someone less emotionally conscious. He cries with a frequency and an openness that the show has always been willing to depict without quite making it a punchline. Because Milhouse cries because things are hard, and things being hard is a legitimate reason. He is not weak for crying. He is just the character who is most willing to show it, which makes him both vulnerable and strangely admirable. His parents divorced in one of the show's early seasons, and the divorce affected him in the specific ways childhood divorce affects children. The specific confusion of a landscape that was supposed to be stable, suddenly revealing itself as contingent. His parents eventually reconcile. They later unreconcile. The relationship of Kirk and Luann Van Houten is one of Springfield's less stable institutions, cycling through states of separation and togetherness in ways that Milhouse has had to accommodate as part of his background condition. He loves Bart without qualification. This is one of the most consistent and most touching things in the show. Milhouse's friendship with Bart is not conditional on Bart being good to him, which Bart is not always. He forgives Bart for things that the show depicts as not quite forgivable. He shows up for Bart in the moments when Bart needs someone to show up. He is loyal in ways that Bart does not always deserve, and that Bart knows he does not always deserve, and this creates a specific quality of guilt in Bart's relationship with Milhouse that is one of the more interesting emotional dynamics in the show's background. Nelson Muntz's laugh is one of the show's most famous sounds. The ha-ha. It arrives as the response to any misfortune, applied to anyone in its vicinity without regard for whether the person experiencing the misfortune is a stranger, or a friend, or Nelson himself. Nelson has laughed at his own disasters with the same sound he produces for other people's, which is either a lack of self-compassion or a kind of philosophical consistency about the fundamental comedy of all suffering. His home life is complicated. His mother has the quality of someone who wanted to be somewhere else and decided to be somewhere else, frequently. His father is mostly absent. The house has the specific texture of a household where the organizational infrastructure is minimal and the children are managing themselves within the minimal. Nelson manages himself with a competence that is the specific competence of a child who has never been able to rely on anyone else to manage him. He is tougher than the other children in ways that have never quite resolved into cruelty. He is capable of being kind. The show has given him moments of genuine softness that exist alongside the bravado that suggests someone who learned very early that softness was not safe and who has therefore put it somewhere it cannot be reached in ordinary circumstances, but that is still there, available in the moments when the circumstances are right. Martin Prince is Springfield Elementary's academic achiever, the character whose intelligence is visible and announced in ways that have made him the target of bullying in ways that Lisa, whose intelligence is more broadly recognized and respected, has largely escaped. Martin's enthusiasm for learning is genuine and undefended. He raises his hand. He has the correct answer. He volunteers information that the class has not asked for, and he does this in ways that invite resentment from people who are not interested in correct answers being supplied before they have had time to feel the question. He has been bullied consistently throughout the show's run, by Nelson and by other characters who function as Springfield's ambient unkindness. The show has been honest about the bullying without precisely condemning it, depicting it as part of the social ecology of childhood that it is, unfortunate and consistent, and something the adults around it address imperfectly. Martin has his own inner life that the show visits occasionally. He has passions beyond academia. He likes role-playing games. He has friends. In specific contexts, he is not only the academic achiever, he is a child who has built his identity around the thing that comes naturally to him because the thing that comes naturally to him is the only thing that reliably produces approval from anyone, and he has run with it. The children of Springfield are the show's most direct statement about what the town produces. They are the inheritors of the place, the ones who will eventually be the adults at Moe's and in the retirement castle and behind the counter at the Quick E-Mart. They are being shaped by Springfield right now, in the school and on the streets, and in the homes that the show depicts with varying levels of functionality. Some of them will leave. Lisa will leave. The show has shown us this. She goes somewhere that is not Springfield, and becomes someone who could not have been fully herself in Springfield. Most of them will stay. Springfield keeps most of its people. The gravity of familiarity and employment, and the specific comfort of known dysfunction over unknown improvement, keeps most of the children of Springfield in Springfield forever, growing into versions of the adults they grew up watching, sitting on the stools that those adults eventually vacated. The loop is patient. It will wait for them. Charles Montgomery, Plantagenet Schicklgruber Burns, has been alive for longer than most institutions. and the show has been showing you this fact from every possible angle for 36 years. He remembers things. This is the quiet, ongoing revelation of the Burns character. In casual conversation, in throwaway moments, he drops references that belong to historical periods that no living person should be referencing from personal memory. He mentions what Teddy Roosevelt was really like. He has opinions about the way things were before the motor car. He recalls specific social customs from periods that the century has discarded. He does this without emphasis, without the framing that would turn it into a joke, in the tone of a man passing along ordinary information from his own experience. He once described the Spanish-American War as though he had been there. The show does not follow up on this. It cannot follow up on everything. His physical form is one of the show's most consistent visual jokes, the ultra-thin body that moves through space as if borrowed from a 19th century illustration of a consumptive aristocrat. He is bony. He is frail in ways that seem actively incompatible with his continued biological function. He can barely lift things. He has been knocked over by a single sheet of paper in a breeze. He emerged from an encounter with a butterfly uncertain of the winner. And yet he persists. He runs an empire. He drives his car to the plant every morning, a car from a decade that cars no longer come from, maintained in running condition by someone who is presumably Smithers or someone Smithers has arranged. He arrives. He takes the elevator to his office. He sits at his enormous desk and he runs things. His management style is one of the show's extended observations about unchecked power. Burns does not consult. He does not consider feedback. He makes decisions based on his own preferences and interests, and has done so for so long that the idea of external input has become simply foreign to him, a concept from a different governance tradition that he is aware of, without feeling obligated to adopt. He is not stupid. This is important to keep in mind, because the comedy of the show sometimes positions his extreme age and physical decrepitude as cognitive alongside physical, but that is not what the show has established. Burns is sharp. He is strategically intelligent. He sees the angles. He understands the mechanisms. He has run a multi-billion-dollar enterprise for more than a century, and the enterprise is still running. The decision-making that produced this outcome was not accidental. His cruelty is also not accidental. It is policy. Burns has made a consistent decision that sentiment is a liability in business and personal life, that the impulse toward generosity must be rigorously managed, that the moment you start allowing people to matter to you, they become leverage that others can use against you. He watched that happen once, perhaps. He decided it would not happen again, and several decades later, he is the most powerful person in Springfield and almost entirely alone. Almost. Smithers. The relationship between Burns and Smithers is the show's most complicated emotional relationship, and it is complicated in ways that take a long time to fully see because the show has always presented it through the lens of comedy while allowing the emotional reality to accumulate underneath. Smithers loves Burns. This is not subtext. This is text. The show has made it clear that Waylon Smithers is devoted to Charles Montgomery Burns in a way that is beyond professional loyalty and beyond friendship and into a territory that the show spent many seasons dancing around before the presidency. Cultural context changed enough to allow the show to say directly what it had always been showing. He loves a man who does not love him back in the same way. Burns is fond of Smithers in the way that powerful people are fond of the infrastructure that keeps them functional. He values Smithers. He would miss Smithers if Smithers were gone. He has demonstrated, in specific episodes, that the loss of Smithers creates a personal distress that goes beyond the operational inconvenience of losing a competent employee. But it is not the same thing. Smithers knows this. He has always known this. He has chosen to stay anyway, which is either a statement about his specific emotional constitution or a statement about love in general, and the way it does not require reciprocity to be real. He is present every day. He manages Burns's schedule and his medical care and his social calendar and his correspondence and all the dozens of logistical elements that keep Burns alive and functional. He does this with total commitment. There are episodes that ask what Smithers would be outside of this relationship, who he would be if he were not defined by proximity to Burns. The answers are interesting. He has hobbies. He has a community. He is genuinely liked by the people in his life who know him outside the Burns context. He could, the show suggests, be happy in a life that was not organized around Burns. He stays anyway. The Simpsons has never told Smithers he is wrong to stay. It has shown you the cost of staying, the things it prevents him from having. But it has also shown you that the love is real, that the devotion is genuine, and that genuine love for an imperfect recipient is still genuine love. Burns will outlive most things in Springfield. The treatments will continue. The diseases will remain in equilibrium. Smithers will be there to manage the schedule. And somewhere in the vast dark office above the plant, behind the glass that looks down onto the control room where Homer is dozing in his chair, Burns will be watching something in the city below his window and thinking about something that happened in 1923 or 1943 or 1963. Some specific incident from one of the decades he has passed through that taught him something he has been applying ever since. He is old. He is not finished. He will not be finished for a very long time. The bar closes at 2 in the morning in the episodes where time is tracked at all. Before it closes, for the hours that it is open, there are the regulars, and the regulars have lives that the show has sketched in various directions over the years without ever committing fully to any one picture of them. They are best understood the way you understand people you have known primarily in one context. You know Lenny from the bar. You know Carl from the bar. What you know is real. It is just necessarily partial. Lenny Leonard has been Homer's friend since at least their shared days at the plant, and possibly since high school, and possibly since longer than that. The flashback episodes having placed Lenny in the background of several periods of Homer's past, in ways that suggest his presence is close to continuous. He has a bachelor's degree in nuclear physics, which makes him the most formally educated person in Sector 7G, a credential that the job has not required of him and that he has not particularly applied beyond the baseline competence it built. He likes beer, he likes the bar, he likes Homer's company and Carl's company and Moe's company in the specific, uncomplicated way that makes the bar work as a social institution. He does not want more from the evening than the evening provides. This is not resignation. This is preference. He has dated. He has had relationships that the show visits briefly and then moves past. His love life is given slightly less attention than Homer's romantic history or Moe's romantic disasters, which places it in the middle distance, acknowledged but not the foreground. He seems in most of his appearances to be basically okay. Not euphoric, not devastated. Okay in the durable and underrated way. Carl Carlson is the most quietly exceptional person in Homer's immediate circle, a detail the show reveals in increments across several episodes rather than announcing it. He has a master's degree. He comes from a prominent Icelandic family, which the show established in an episode that explored Carl's heritage and his relationship to an identity that his Springfield life has not given him much occasion to claim. He is thoughtful. He is genuinely kind. He is also completely content at the plant and the bar, in a way that makes more sense the longer you watch him, because contentment is not always the absence of ambition, and sometimes the most intelligent choice is the one that looks from the outside like not choosing. He and Lenny have the kind of friendship that has been around long enough to not need regular maintenance. It runs on familiarity and trust built over decades. They do not need to explain themselves to each other. They do not need to perform interest in each other's lives. They just show up. There is one episode that explores a possible deeper dimension of their friendship, a hint that the bond between them goes beyond the professional and social contexts in which we usually see them. The episode handles this with a light touch and then does not revisit it, which is one of the show's characteristic moves. The suggestion dropped and not pursued, the implication allowed to exist in the audience's imagination without being confirmed or denied. Barney at the bar is different from Barney outside the bar. Inside the bar, he is himself. The version of himself that the bar has shaped and that is comfortable in the bar's specific dimensions. Outside the bar, in the episodes that take him out of his usual context, there is a Barney who is more uncertain, less naturally positioned, someone who has to figure out where to stand in spaces that are not organized around the stool he has occupied for decades. He films things, occasionally. The creative impulse that his young self had never left entirely just found fewer contexts to express itself in. When it gets a context, when someone points a camera at him or near him, or when the episode gives him something to make, there is a quality to what he produces that surprises people who know only the bar version of him. Moe himself. We have spent time with Moe. His loneliness, his devotion to his regulars, the bar as the institution that organizes his life and provides the human connection that the rest of his life does not offer with the same reliability. He tends bar. He listens to people complain. He occasionally complains himself, loudly, with the specific theatrical quality that his complaints have, as if the performance of suffering is itself a small form of control over suffering. He has tried things, inventions, businesses, relationships. Each one has not quite worked out in ways that are specific to Moe's specific combination of qualities, the combination that makes him excellent at being a bartender and slightly less than excellent at the things that bartending was not designed to address. The bar closes at 2. Moe turns off most of the lights. He wipes down the bar. He does a loose version of closing procedures, the version of those procedures that a bar run by Moe can be expected to achieve. He turns the sign. He stands alone for a moment in his own establishment, the bar empty now, the amber light reduced further to almost nothing. He goes to the back room. The bar will be here tomorrow. The stools will be here. The regulars will arrive when they arrive and take the seats they always take, and the evening will happen in the way evenings have always happened here, with the specific comfortable sameness of a place that does not ask anyone to be different from how they already are. That is Moe's. That has always been Moe's. Come in. The stool is available. Springfield was founded, according to the show's shifting official record, by Jebediah Springfield, who may or may not have been who the town's official history says he was. The founding mythology runs through the show like a fault line. Jebediah Springfield is the town's patron saint, the man on the statue in the square, the figure whose spirit the town invokes at civic events, and whose quote about a place where people of all kinds could live together in harmony is inscribed on various public buildings. He is beloved. He is the founding figure. He may have been a murderous pirate who faked his own death and stole another man's identity and relocated to the interior of America to escape the consequences of several decades of maritime crime. The show presents evidence for both readings and allows them to coexist, which is its most sophisticated statement about the mythology of American founding. Every town has a Jebediah. Every town has a statue in the square and an official story and a version of its history that the town maintains, because maintaining the history is maintaining the identity, and identity is worth something even when the history it is based on is not entirely clean. Springfield has been through several versions of itself over the course of American history. The show's flashback episodes, which visit various periods of the town's past with varying degrees of historical accuracy and vary widely in their commitment to consistency with each other, have placed Springfield in different historical contexts. The town during the Revolutionary War, where a Simpson ancestor made a contribution to the birth of the nation that was either heroic or inadvertent, depending on the episode. The town during the Civil War, where the Simpson family's position was ambiguous in ways that the show handles with the same light touch it brings to most historical material. The town during various periods of the 20th century, where different Simpsons generations lived in ways that track the broad strokes of American experience. Springfield has experienced economic booms and recessions. It has had industries that rose and fell. The steel mill that employed an earlier generation, the textile factory, the agricultural period before the town became suburban. The show gestures at this history without committing to a precise timeline, because precision in history would conflict with the floating timeline's need to keep the present always present. The town's relationship with the federal government has always been complicated. Federal agencies arrive periodically. The EPA, in the Simpsons movie, sealed the entire town under a dome because Springfield's pollution had reached a level that made containment the only viable option. This is the most dramatic federal intervention in Springfield's history, but it is not the first. Federal inspectors have arrived and been managed. Federal laws have technically applied but not always been applied. Burns has had relationships with government figures that have allowed regulatory oversight to remain theoretical rather than practical. The town of Springfield is not in any state because being in any specific state would invite the specific regulatory infrastructure of that state. And Springfield has always thrived in the uncertainty, the regulatory gap that comes from being perpetually unlocated. This is not an accident. The show has suggested, and the theories surrounding it have developed at length, that Springfield's geographic ambiguity serves an interest, whose interest is not precisely identified. But the ambiguity has advantages that have accumulated over decades into something very close to institutional protection. The town has also had its share of mayors, municipal figures, political machines. Mayor Quimby has been in office for most of the show's run, a politician whose Kennedy-adjacent vocal characteristics are one of the show's most sustained impressionistic jokes, and whose actual governance of Springfield is consistent with his character's general approach to responsibility, which is to say, broad in its ambition and creative in its execution. He has won elections. He has been nearly removed from office on various occasions. He has made promises in the specific way of politicians who have been making promises long enough to understand the relationship between a promise and an action is not necessarily causal. Springfield continues to elect him because the alternatives have been worse, or because the town has the specific relationship with its own dysfunction that prefers the known quantity. The municipal infrastructure of Springfield, the sanitation department, the waterworks, the fire department, the police under Wiggum's extremely relaxed supervision, these are the mechanisms by which the town maintains itself, or maintains the appearance of maintaining itself, which, in Springfield, amounts to approximately the same thing. The fire department has responded to many fires. Not always quickly, not always effectively, but it has responded. The sanitation trucks make their rounds, collecting what they collect from the streets of a town that produces waste at rates that are not entirely consistent with a population of this size, possibly because the town's biological processes are operating at slightly different rates than normal towns due to the ambient radiation situation. The schools. Springfield Elementary has a principal, a vice principal, a collection of teachers, and a budget that has been underfunded for as long as the show has been on the air. The school survives because Skinner, or Tamzarian, or whoever he actually is devoted to it in a way that compensates through sheer personal investment for the institutional support that is consistently inadequate. He fights for the school. He has always fought for the school. The school continues to function at approximately the level that his fighting allows it to function. Springfield has a history that the town carries lightly, the way all towns carry their histories. The weight distributed across the buildings and the streets and the stories that the oldest residents tell to anyone willing to listen, which in Springfield means anyone who is not yet too old to have their own history to worry about. Grandpa tells stories. The stories drift. They contain somewhere inside them something true about Springfield, and about the time before Springfield was the Springfield we know. Listen for it in the drift. It is there. The show has never told us what happens between episodes. This is standard for episodic television, and yet in Springfield it takes on a specific quality, because Springfield is a town where extraordinary things happen with extraordinary frequency, and the spaces between those events must be filled with something. In the days and weeks between episodes, the Simpsons family is living their lives in the version of Springfield that does not have a camera present, and what that life looks like is left entirely to the imagination. Homer goes to work. He drives the same route. He parks. He goes to his workstation. The day passes in the way that working days pass when nothing unusual is happening, which is to say, slowly and with the particular quality of time spent in a place where the purpose of your presence is not entirely clear to you. Marge manages the house. She does the things she always does with the efficiency of someone who has done them for decades, and for whom efficiency is now a reflex rather than an effort. She makes the grocery list. She drives to the Quickie Mart. She does the laundry with the quiet competence of someone who has decided that laundry is not a site of existential inquiry, and that the clothes being clean is the point, and getting them clean is how you get to the point. Bart goes to school. This is the most difficult sentence in this paragraph to write with confidence, because Bart's attendance record across 36 years has been inconsistent in ways that the show has depicted without ever totaling up. He goes to school when the episode calls for school to be the setting. Between episodes, he probably attends at approximately the rate that Bart would attend, which is the rate that avoids the specific consequences he most wants to avoid while maximizing the time available for other activities. Lisa goes to school with a reliability that her brother does not approach. School is for Lisa the most accessible version of the intellectual stimulation that she needs, and that Springfield otherwise does not provide reliably. The library helps, but the library is finite in ways that teachers are not, in that teachers generate new material through interaction, through conversation, through the questions they ask and the way they respond to her questions, and this keeps the library's limitation from being a ceiling for her. Maggie watches. In the spaces between episodes, she is watching all of this. The family moving through its days, the patterns, the rhythms, the things that happen consistently and the things that happen unexpectedly. She takes it all in and processes it and puts it somewhere. What she does with it is still, after 36 years, unknown. Springfield between episodes is a town doing the ordinary things that towns do when the camera is not on them. People buying groceries, people going to work, people sitting in traffic on the streets that the show has depicted and that continue to exist when the plot is not using them. The traffic on Springfield's roads is not fictional. It is the traffic of a real city, the kind of traffic that exists because a certain number of people need to be in different places at the same time, and the infrastructure exists to move them there imperfectly. The Quickie Mart is open around the clock. Between episodes, customers come and go who are not characters in the show, who are just Springfield residents with names that the writers have not given them going about the business of their lives. They buy milk. They buy batteries. They buy whatever they came in for and they leave, and the hot dogs continue to rotate, and the squishy machine continues to hum. Moe's Bar opens at a time that is consistent and closes at 2. Between episodes, the regulars arrive and have conversations that are not about anything in particular, and that would not support an episode's plot, but that are real conversations anyway, the kind of conversation that happens when people who know each other well are in a comfortable space with nothing specific to accomplish and the evening ahead of them. These conversations are some of the most real things in Springfield. The conversations that happen when there is no plot, just people and time and the low hum of a bar that has been a bar for decades and intends to keep being one. Springfield is real in the spaces between the episodes. Not real in the sense of existing in a physical location you could visit, but real in the sense that the characters continue to exist when the camera is elsewhere, that the town persists in its own logic, that the orange house on Evergreen Terrace has light in its windows even when no one is telling a story about the family inside. You know this because you have always felt it. When you remember an episode, you do not remember only the events. You remember the town around the events. You remember the feeling of Springfield as a place that exists continuously, that was there before the episode began and will be there after it ends. This is what good fiction does. It creates continuity beyond what it shows you. It makes the spaces between the scenes feel inhabited. Springfield is inhabited. It has always been inhabited. The lights are on in the houses, the camera does not visit, the conversations are happening in the rooms we cannot see. The town is alive. Right now. Tonight. Even as you sleep. Especially as you sleep. You are falling asleep. I can tell because the words have begun to arrive more slowly. Because the thoughts have stopped being thoughts in the way that waking thoughts are thoughts and have become something looser, something that has more in common with images than arguments, more in common with feelings than conclusions. This is good. This is where we were going. Springfield is settling around you. The town at this hour has a quality that the show has rarely depicted directly, but that exists in the logic of everything it has shown you. The quality of a place that knows it is being watched and has allowed itself, finally, to stop performing for the camera, to just be the town it is in the hours when no episode is happening. Homer is asleep on the couch. He fell asleep mid-show, which is his preferred method. The television's blue light is steady in the living room window, visible from the street, the one lit window on Evergreen Terrace at this hour, a beacon that says someone is home even if the someone is unconscious. Upstairs, Marge has been asleep for an hour. Her breathing is regular. The pillow has the shape of her head in it. The room smells like her room. The specific combination of things that makes a room personal, that you could identify in the dark if you had lived in it long enough. Bart is almost there. His thoughts have slowed. The idea he had earlier has dissolved into the general warmth of sleep approaching. Whatever he is going to do tomorrow will reveal itself tomorrow. Tonight there is only the dark room and the skateboard against the wall and the sound of Springfield being quiet outside the window. Lisa has been asleep for a while. The saxophone is in the corner. The journal is closed. Whatever she was working through today will be different tomorrow, slightly shifted by the night's processing, the way sleep rearranges the materials of the day into something that makes more sense in the morning. Maggie's eyes are closing. This is notable. Maggie's eyes, which have been open and watching and taking everything in for 36 years, are closing. The mobile turns above her in the slow way mobiles turn at this hour, the shapes becoming abstract in the low light, the colors barely distinguishable. She is watching the shapes turn, and then she is not watching. And the room is very quiet. And Springfield is very quiet. And you are very quiet. The cooling towers exhale slowly. The steam rises and disperses. The night sky above Springfield has the quality it always has at this hour, dark and very present and full of stars that have been there all along. that the daytime makes invisible, that the nighttime returns to view. Homer found his mother in a cemetery. He lost her again in a cab. He stood outside under these stars and thought something he could not say. Lisa played the blues in her room, and the music went out the window into the dark, and someone somewhere heard it. Bart wrote his name on a wall that still has his name on it somewhere, faded now but present. Maggie saw everything. She still sees everything. She is asleep now, but even in her sleep she is watching. The way some people watch, the way the very aware ones watch, with the whole of themselves rather than just the eyes. The loop holds. The family is home. The town persists. And you, wherever you are, whatever room this is, whatever hour it is where you are, whatever day has just ended, and whatever tomorrow is waiting on the other side of sleep, you are here too. You are part of the Springfield that exists in the imaginations of everyone who has ever watched these yellow people in this yellow town do their impossible lives. You are on the couch. You are home. Sleep now. The show is not over. It will be here when you come back. It always is. It always is. Good night.